This is the 18th season of Bass Talk Live. With your host, Matt Pangrath. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Bass Cat Boats, AFCO, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, and Pro Guide Batteries.
PTL, coming at you!
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. Another exciting in-studio guest today. We try to get you in every couple months or so, and then it helps when the guy you get in every couple of months is like leading every stat in the world and leading the Opens on his way to potentially qualifying for the Elite Series, making a run at the NPFL Angler of the Year this year. If you haven't figured it out by now and you're just listening on iTunes, that would be the one and only John Soukup. Thanks for making the drive.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for waking me up.
I'm going to call you out on this, though. So John drives the what color of, what do you call this color with the bass tank? That kind of greenish. Was there
we call it Blast Tank Teal.
Bass Tank Teal. So if you've seen John's Bass Tank Teal truck, it's impossible to miss, and that's what I've always seen you driving. So I got to the studio this morning, and John was in the driveway waiting on me in a Volkswagen Passat. And I was like, I was like, who the heck is that? Like, there's never anyone in the studio this early. I knew John was supposed to be coming in. I was about a half hour early, and there was John in a Passat eating a hard-boiled egg.
We've always owned rice burners since I was 19 years old.
Really?
I had a 3-cylinder Chevy Sprint when I had $0 to my name. That thing got like 60, 70 miles to the gallon.
What was it?
A 3-cylinder Chevy Sprint.
I feel like I need to get one of those to drive into the studio.
It was smaller than a Geo Metro. When my hand would go out, I felt like it would touch the I had to be careful. Cruising, I'd get up to like 65 miles an hour and be like, But you know what? I didn't have to worry about gas.
A Geo Sprint?
No, not
a Geo Metro.
Chevy Sprint.
Oh, a Chevy Sprint.
Yeah. That was back in the day. So then I had some Jetta.
Wow, that is. I have seen those around.
Yeah, they pay for themselves, man.
And then you've had the Jettas, and now the Passat.
We had upgraded the Passat since we have the kids. Well, and now the family won't even fit in a Passat. So it's just my wife and I. We switch off with it to save fuel. With it living out in the country, as many miles as we put on.
What does that get miles per gallon?
I'm in the 40 range.
Wow.
It's a diesel.
Oh, that's a diesel?
Yeah.
Oh, so that is optimized for fuel performance. So you fill that thing up like once a month.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, when I left the house today, an hour and a half away, it was like barely above empty, and I was like, I need to fuel up. And then I got here, and I'd forgot, and it's still barely above empty. So, yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I keep waiting. I read a story about a couple that towed their Mustang across the country in their electric truck, and they had to stop every 100 miles to juice up the truck again. And it had like a map from New York all the way to California where every 100 miles where they had to find the charging station. But I wonder how far away we are from an angler actually towing with an electric truck. You think that'll happen in the next 5 years?
Yeah, probably in the next 5 years. Yeah, I would say that's going to happen.
To where it'll become feasible?
Oh, I don't know about for everybody because I'm just not inside that world, but you get the right guy that's paid the right amount, he'll put up with that. And
you'd have to get paid to do that, though, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Or be very
100 miles is like traveling with a breastfeeding baby. Like,
I would not know what that is like, thankfully.
It takes...
You have to stop every 100 miles?
When my first son, we went to Florida one time, and it took a 25-hour trip into like a 3-day venture,
Really? That's a phrase I never thought I would hear uttered on BTL.
Well, we're living
In
that life.
all
We're living
the
that life
years that
again.
we've done that.
We got a 6-month-old now, so that's got to be one of the first priorities,
Yeah, I got. I'm working at a solid 13 to 14 miles per gallon. I'm up to 16 on the Chevy. I'm probably gonna hit over 250,000 miles on that thing. 3 transmissions, 2 starters, bunch of other stuff on it, and it's a 2018.
Random fact that a lot of people that I like to throw out there. I've got that Dodge at my shop, that old white.
You still have that one?
Still have it. It's a 6-speed 04 Cummins diesel Dodge, 2,500, and it's got 1.54 million miles on it. No, it's dead in the water right now. It don't move. Matter of fact, when I got the call, one of my guys was driving it and it broke down. I said, "Hey, man, just bring her home."
1.4 million.
1.54 million.
Wow, and that was way before you even were traveling around the country bass fishing.
Oh yeah, no, that was just construction. That was construction travel. Yeah, that was hauling.
Interesting.
Yep.
All right, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get into today's show, and I want to take today's show in a different direction than most of the in studio or in depth kind of bass tank shows that we've done in the past. But we'll get to that. I do want to mention, so yesterday, if you listen to yesterday's show, we had a great lineup. Justin Lucas, his 5-year-old Cooper, caught his first fish ever cast to catch by himself. And it happened to be while Lucas was live on air with BTL. He said, I'm usually casting for him or I'm letting him reel it in, but he had just given Cooper a little piece of flatworm on a cork, and they were out on, I think, Champlain. And all of a sudden, I got one. And Justin's talking, and he's like, "Oh, hold on." And he's like, "That's his first one." So I did the little 1-minute clip and sent it to him. I said, "Do what you want with it, but now you've got it." Because at first I felt bad, like, oh, he was on the phone doing an interview for this moment. But then, Lucas was smart enough to say, "Hey, I'm going to put the phone down. I'm going to take care of Cooper for this moment." And the dude was jacked up.
Yeah. I saw him in the live well.
Yeah, he was trying to.
Looks just like us, like we caught a big one just playing with it.
Well, he had the drop shot. What you said when he was digging in the live well there, he had the drop shot back in the live well and was trying to catch it again out of the live well. But anyway, so that was the first. And then we had Michael Neal on who, they're getting ready. They start practice tomorrow for, I think, stage 6 of the BPT on Cayuga Lake. So he got up early in his hotel room because they all stayed up there. They only had a couple days off, reveling in his back-to-back Angler of the Year he was on. And that those were 2 really cool segments. 1, 2, that were on the show yesterday. But in that coverage, I forgot to mention that Kyle Hall won by an ounce on Champlain. I don't know how that slipped my mind, but the event, it's kind of like, that last tournament where you have the Angler of the Year and everyone's focused on that, and then you have the tournament, you kind of have 2 champs. But a really cool victory by Kyle Hall on Champlain on a fishery where this time of year was really tough to get over that 21-pound mark. Champlain, kind of like Oneida where we just fished the Open, one of those fisheries where you have more of a shot at kind of a freak largemouth. We saw what Sean Goodwin did on day 1 with the big bass that he came in with, absolute massive old northern bass, probably as old as he was. But Kyle Hall gets the win by an ounce and is another one of the pro circuit anglers who, after the weights were zeroed, on Champlain, that's a crapshoot, John.
Yeah, and it was 5 ounces over third. So first through third, I think we're within 5 ounces.
1 ounce, John Canada, who was looking to win a second.
Yeah.
And I will get John Canada on. Like I said, he was like, "Hey, I can cancel a turkey hunt and come on after he won Pickwick." But he's like, "I've been on the road for 37 days. I've been looking forward to this turkey hunt." And I was like, "Dude, go kill bird. We can get you on BTL." But second place for John Canada there. But weights are stacked. So I thought at least, hey, there is some justice in the world. The guy who was leading it going into the final day didn't get screwed by an ounce or 2 because all the weights were zeroed. But I got a couple messages about having Kyle Hall on the show. I'm gonna be honest, don't know anything about him. Young kid.
Yeah.
Don't know anything about him. Obviously, can handle the pressure, and he gets the $100,000 check. Another guy that I need to get on the show, Dakota Eber. Absolutely one of the hottest guys going right now, both on the BPT and the pro circuit.
He's on live every time you turn it on.
Yeah, he's a guy who is he fishes everything.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said. You know, I did the Anglers Channel podcast with Chris Brown yesterday, and we were talking about kind of the younger anglers and the guys coming up, and I was talking about how, man, you cannot replace time on the water.
No way.
And this is coming from a guy who you sell electronics for a living.
Yeah, no way.
You sell, hey, it's about catching. Right?
Right.
At the bass sink, it's not about
catching, not fishing.
Catching, not fit. Like you're saying, hey, here's a way you can optimize your fishing. But even that being said, you can put all the graphs on the boat that you want, right? If you do not have not honed that instinct, spent more time on the water, and it doesn't have to be every single day like a professional angler like Dakota Ebear or Kyle Hall or something, but there is no way to replace time on the water.
No.
In my opinion.
No, there's tools that can help you in certain situations, but without that time on the water, especially when we're talking about achieving the highest levels, right? We're talking about winning major tournaments. There's zero replacement for instincts and understanding of bass behavior, fish behavior, the layout. I mean, you can look at electronics all you want, but if you don't know what that fish is actually doing or why it's doing it, you won't beat that guy next to you. No way.
And then I'm also jacked for today because to close out the show, yesterday I had Phil Dutra on, California angler, grew up on the Delta, fished the Delta exclusively up until 2.5 years ago. If you haven't listened to yesterday's show, you need to go back and listen to it. A lot of information in that show, a lot of good stuff. It's not just like a recap and then a rookie interview. Like Dutra goes into these analytics and numbers and percentages and what his goals were, so he knew like exactly where he was in the rookie of the year standings. He knew what he had to do at Champlain based on statistics and weights and pass to get in, and his goal was to make the championship and all this stuff. And I'm like, now you're speaking my language.
Yeah, I understand that talk too.
Right, because you have been part and kind of understand the little hitch in my giddy up that I'm going through this year where I deviated from my statistical analysis of it because of my own volition. I was like, hey, I need to change my strategy. And now I'm circling back after talking with Phil, after doing the numbers again. And I'm like, man, I'm going back to my strategy for the remainder of the year. Yeah, I'm not going to make the Elite Series through the points. That's reserved for guys like John Soukup and Brad Hallman and all those guys, or in any division, but I'm getting back to my roots, but I'm glad I deviated from that. And it's interesting, we come into the studio and you're like, dude, I've been running the numbers in the Opens. And I couldn't help but laugh.
Yeah, I've always been that way, man. Even Bass Nation days. I still have old spreadsheets from Bass Nation days.
You would do your own spreadsheets.
Yeah, I remember, and I'd send it out to some people every once in a while.
Yeah, I do remember that. Hey, here's the points, here's the drops, here's the scenarios, here's what's going on.
I know everybody's predicting this, but here's some facts right here. Like, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Statistically, shit happens.
So we're going to go through the numbers because numbers-wise, on the Bassmaster Open, this is cool. There's 83 guys that started it. This was your first year fishing all of them. And you've gone 8th, 60th, 3rd, 62nd, and 46th. Very solid year, incredible year when you take into account of 230 boats in every single one of those tournaments. Take those 5 tournaments, average them, divide them by 230, and you're in the top like 90, top 10%, top 10 to 15% of every single tournament out of those. And as a result, you are leading the it just says Opens Angler of the Year. I want to make sure I give credit to whoever. It is the St. Croix Opens, right? This year? Still, I believe it is. I believe so. Because that was a big deal for the overall, was Bass finding a sponsor for the overall. So, yeah, I want to make sure I give credit to those guys for stepping up and supporting the Opens. But 826 points. Then Cooper Gallant, very impressive guy. Like, he's been on the scene before, but, like, he exploded onto the scene.
I'm a fan of his.
I am too.
As a matter of fact, I missed an opportunity to introduce myself at a gas station one day because I had my mind somewhere else, and he drove off. But one of these days I'll introduce myself. But, he was very close to qualifying last year. I can't remember which division. Do a little quick research, and you'll find it. I think he might have finished in, like, 5th or something in one of the divisions.
He finished 5th in the Northern Opens. He had 512 points. That was the freak show where Jonathan Kelly, Iconelli, and Redwine all had 549 points.
Yeah, they all tied, huh?
Yep. So yeah, Coop is
Obviously, you got what it takes. It will happen.
And then Keith Poche, no secret there, dude. It's if you go back and listen to the interview I did at the beginning of the year with Keith Poche, his strategy in the opens. I want to get into this today. I want to get into the open strategy because I think unless you are an established pro who has been doing this for a long time and you're starting at a higher level than 95% of the field already, I think you have to stick with a plan and do something outside the box to consistently perform at the open level with the way that it is now. To digest that, what are your thoughts on that?
We'd have to go into detail because I might think differently. I might.
All right, let's just jump into that right now. We'll get back to the points.
We'd almost have
later.
to go, event by event. But I do feel like this. People say you got to have a good tournament. No, you don't have to have a good tournament. You have to have an excellent tournament. If you really do the math, you have to be above average, to be able to have the points, to finish in the top 20 or top 30 every time. That's way above average.
Right.
Average finish, you're down in the 50s, 60s, 70s, like for an average good finish. But you have to – so your fish size have to be bigger. So to me to be honest with you, look back, dude, this year, even through some of my success last year, it's been a lot more return than just a meat and potatoes for me. Now I do have, my finesse. I go back to some finesse stuff, and then I have my live scoping skills that I pull out. Maybe some people think that's kind of eccentric or a little bit different at times, and it was in Florida because people weren't thinking about doing it there.
And it was at Oneida.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. I think you have to have something in your back pocket to consistently do well in the opens. You can't go in and consistently do well. I think doing what you're supposed to do, fishing in the crowds, fishing the standard areas where, because let's face it, 80% of the field knows where it's, I wouldn't say 80, 60% of the field knows where it's going to go down with what it's supposed to go down with. And those plays, like you saw at Oneida, it was insane.
Yeah. Now, I will say it's been kind of neat this year. I've had a few conversations with Keith Poche, several. I'm not going to say we've made buddies or even exchanged phone numbers or anything like that. But him and Kenta Kimura, we have ran into each other all year long.
Yeah.
In practice, in tournament, on the water, shared water.
Non-traditional locations?
Some.
Yeah.
And some not so much. But for sure some. I've got an aluminum boat. I've been in some spots, where other boats can necessarily be scared to go. And, of course, Keith's going even further than what I'm going.
Here, go ahead.
And so it's been neat to see, because when you say not fishing in the crowd, some of my best finishes, I've been very much in a crowd, but the crowd was Kenta and Keith.
Yeah.
And, people, we're literally in Florida, Kenta and I are, boat to boat fishing. And so we found the same fish. My formula has been find as many fish as possible. Find as many bites as possible. And now I've missed that, on Mississippi.
Ross Barnett.
I wasn't getting very many bites.
I blocked that name out of my mind.
I wasn't getting very many bites, and then when I did, I that one I didn't really connect with. I salvaged my season with a last-minute decision the final day for 15 minutes flurry, and I did it both days. And so I never really connected with a bunch of fish. But it just seems like for me, in my experience, and all you guys talk about swinging for the fence, in my experience, which is limited compared to someone like a Mike Iaconelli or like a Kevin Dan, like you're talking about, when I've got around a lot of bites, just a ton of bites, you're usually around bigger fish than what you think. And so usually I'll once I've tapped into that, I'm okay, I'm around a bunch of bites. I can get away from this. I don't beat them up. I don't try to figure out how to get bigger bites. And then tournament day, I know they're going to adjust a little bit. So I may go around that section or that area or that pattern and then poke around and try to figure out how to get bigger bites during the tournament. And most of the time.
It sounds shockingly familiar to the spoken hub theory that I've talked about many times.
Yeah. It's 100% how I've won. All the wins that I've had, the bigger fish just start showing up. I didn't go out thinking, I'm going to smash them today. Right. I knew I was going to catch a bunch of fish, though, without a doubt.
But it was a quote-unquote, I don't want to say safe, but you felt that it was you searched out reliable patterns instead of, hey, I could win the tournament on this. You're saying, hey, this will keep me in the hunt. This will give me a shot. And then you've been able to maximize that bite, which then puts you in the hunt for the win.
Very much like a racer would paint out, a race instead of just burning out in the first lap, getting way ahead of somebody in a foot race, staying with the pack and then having something left for the end of the day. Because in a 3-day tournament, the environment's going to change. The fish is going to change. The local pressure is going to change. You may have a breakdown. There's just all these factors. So I have been as conservative as possible throughout these events of finding just reliable fish. And sometimes that does mean fishing pretty close to the ramp. Sometimes it means fishing in the crowd. Now, I don't mind the crowd. I don't enjoy it, but I don't mind it if I know that I can still get bit.
Yeah.
As long as they're not messing with me.
So it's almost like a war of attrition for you. You're letting other people make mistakes, quote unquote, swing for the fence, fish the crowded areas, take risks, and by your consistency and execution, you're climbing in the ranks as other people, quote unquote, make mistakes.
Yeah, I think so.
Is that a fair assessment?
It
I've
is.
never heard it described that way. But
I've also, don't get me wrong, there's been times with co-anglers, but I'm like, hey, man, we're going to go swing for it for a couple hours, and we could do something that I know 100% I may blank, but if I do get bit, it's going to be a big one. And I've seen that be great to me, and I've seen it not be great to me, but most of the time I'm not doing that unless I've either got some fish in the well or I know that there's a high percentage that's going to benefit me.
I'm not huge, I don't know what made me think this. I'm not like huge into boxing or anything, but isn't that kind of Floyd Mayweather strategy on how he's gone undefeated?
Yeah.
Don't make mistakes, have a sound game plan, stick with your game plan, and let the other guy punch himself out?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so, man. I think we burn ourselves out, stress ourselves out too much trying to find this needle in the haystack stuff. And don't get me wrong, I will spend time in practice doing that after I've found a consistent bite of some kind. Now, it does get stressful in practice when you've gone 3 days and you haven't found that consistent bite.
Yeah.
And then tournament day is the next day and you're really trying to guess, so it's back to practice. You got to keep that practice alive.
Yeah, that's when you focus on high percentage areas.
Yep.
With baits that get bit.
Yeah, I mean, I can go through my season and talk about the high percentage stuff, and I don't think it's very complicated. It's pretty simple. The first tournament of the year in the Open was Toho, right?
Yeah.
And so we had that winter freeze, so I used a jerkbait and went for suspended fish because I figured the fish were acting like winter fish, and they were, and I was catching a lot of dinks, but then there was a couple sections that had some giants in it, and I didn't really get any of those to bite during the tournament, but I did in practice for sure.
How deep do you want to go into that Florida one? Because I think there's. Are you cool with
whatever.
that?
Yeah.
All right.
Whatever.
So Florida, first one of the year. John's fishing it, and it's a weird dynamic. Like when you're in a house and you have buddies who are fishing, right? So like Miller's fishing it, you're fishing it, Hallman's fishing it, Upshaw. There's a bunch of guys, and like sometimes you go a tournament and you're like on the phone with a guy all practice who's in the tournament, right? And you're like, well, let's like sometimes Brad will call and he'll be like, put your phone on speakerphone. We're figuring this damn thing out.
Right.
And 3 hours later, it's like, I got a bite. Where was this bite? What was that? Sometimes I go entire opens and never talk to Brad at all. I have no idea what he's doing until the end. Other ones. So I had like 2 bites in Florida. I'm hoping this story kind of opens up kind of how you think, because there's a key line in it, and I was freaking out. I wasn't like freaking out, but I was freaking out because it's first one of the year. My whole big thing was don't suck in Florida, and it didn't occur to me that I would then suck at Oneida and in Mississippi to cancel out the Florida, but whatever. And I call you and I said, dude, are you getting bit? And you're like, yeah, a lot. I said, like, how many? And you're like, I've had a couple 8s. I think I've had a 10. Catching a bunch of fish, and I'm like, dude, this is not. No, you're not. And you're like, yeah, I am. So towards the end of practice, and you didn't really give up anything. You said something that blew my mind, and I've talked to other guys about it, but I haven't talked to it on air. You said, Matt, I said, you need to reprogram your mind right now. He goes, you said, well, how do you remember it went down? Explain how it went down, because on the water, I literally had an epiphany, and in all honesty, that's how I finished like 47th in that tournament, was because of, or 49th, is because of what you told me in a 2-minute conversation on the last day of practice.
So we haven't talked about this off air or anything, but you're talking about the conversation where I said, forget that you're in Florida.
Yes,
If you were in Oklahoma,
reprogram your mind.
Yeah, don't try to chase after what everybody says to do in Florida. Just think, if you were in Oklahoma right now, what would these fish be doing under these conditions?
You asked me that question, then you waited for me to answer.
Yeah.
And I said, well, massive cold front. I said, super early in the year. I said, I'd be looking for rock close to deep water.
Yeah, water's low too. In some areas there's low water, and that's as simple as it was for me. I tried to go up and do the Florida stuff in practice for the first half part of the day, and didn't get bit at all. Saw some empty beds, saw some fry, so I knew some fish had spawned. The water was 49 degrees, if I remember right. Like, it was stupid.
Yeah.
Iguanas were falling out of the trees because it was 20 degrees the night before, and I'm like, well, they're probably here, but I'd have to punch and hit one in the head, and I haven't been able to do that yet.
Yeah.
So you're gonna go explore things. So you go offshore and go looking for suspended fish, and there they are, acting like winter fish.
Yeah, but you told me that, and I said, well, if I was in Oklahoma, and I told you, I said, well, I'd look for that, and you say, and? I said, okay. I said, well, there's only one place on this entire chain where that exists, and you said, okay. And I said, you're kidding. And you said, no. And I was like, all right, and that was it.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was one of those deals where I was like, man, we sometimes really overthink this thing doing what we're supposed to do. And sometimes the simplest answers are the most effective and the correct ones. But we overlook it because we go, well, we can't go down to Florida. I just had Brian from Denali send me 35 ounce and ounce and a quarter punching weights.
Yeah.
I just got my BFE box ready.
Yeah.
I've got my swimmers and dippers and all this stuff ready. Like, I'm going down to Florida on Toho.
Right. No, I didn't win the thing. It was won the way we're talking about.
You had a top 10. That's a win.
Yeah, it is for our goals, for the end of year goals. It does. A top 10 feels like a win.
All right. But you did some unique stuff there. So the other thing that you did in Florida was you used kind of common sense and were able to run a pattern that no one else was running. And that was kind of unique.
It may have been unique for Florida, but it wasn't anything that I hadn't been doing all winter long.
That's what I'm saying. It was unique for Florida, though.
Yeah, it might have been for Florida, but I don't think it is. I think the same guys do that stuff off the grass edge. I just was eliminating the grass and staying away from the grass.
Yeah.
I felt like the fish that were in and around the grass were so hunkered into it that I just couldn't get them to react and remove, and they were spread out. But the fish that were off the grass, I could find and locate the schools of them, and there were still fish actually schooling, having crazy behavior, and I knew that even on a bad day, which my final day was a bad day, I only had like 8 pounds. I could catch 8 pounds pretty quick, and then that led me to exploring a little bit more in practice, where I did come across, like you said, a couple giants. And in tournament, I spent, I think, 3 hours both days, first and second day, and third day too, fishing an area where I had seen a 10 and a couple 8s, and they were still there. Matter of fact, on my live scope, when I found this one school of 5, I worked them for a couple hours, not consistently, but they'd come into view, they'd leave. They didn't just stay in one spot. That's the thing. They move around a lot more, I think, than what we give fish credit. Even inactive fish sometimes move around a lot more than we give them credit for. So when they finally came in view and I finally got to get shot them, they kind of moved from the deep water, moved up on a shelf where you'd think they'd feed. I threw in there with a jerkbait and worked it down, and the smallest one of the group came and ate it, and it was like almost a 6-pounder. And I'm like, these other 4 there are giants. They're 8 to 10 pounders. And so every day I came back to that spot for, spent 2 or 3 hours at least every day, because I knew if I got one of those to go, what that would do for my weight. When I'm weighing in 15 pounds pretty consistently, throw an 8-pounder in there, and then you're up in the 20s fast. So,
all right. But so you did something a little unique, but you simplified it in Florida. So then Cherokee was a unique one. I don't even remember what you finished 60th there, but what was your deal there?
I live scoped with a jerkbait out in the open water.
Okay.
Everybody was doing it.
That was really hard to do there, though.
It was hard to do. I didn't figure the down lake thing out. I didn't have enough time to really figure that out. So I went up in the river. I also went up in the river and fished for some largemouth, which is where I found Keith. And I got a little torn between the smallmouth and the largemouth, and making the right decision to pull the plug and go largemouth for smallmouth fishing. And to be honest with you, I just didn't get the size of bites. And when the down lake turned on, those fish were just bigger. and that beat me. I mean, both days I caught a lot of fish, just not the right.
But you
size.
put yourself in position to finish 60th.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, like I said, I like this. Just walking through.
I thought I was doing pretty good when I came in like 14.5 pounds on day one.
Yeah, that was a deal. I did I did the
I'm
exact same
like,
thing. I thought I had a really good bag going on day one, and I mean I had a decent bag, but like man, that bite turned on. I think we both missed a major bite there. The day two it turned on. There was like a little shad spawn deal. The shad got up shallow. Those fish were shallow. I was talking to guys that were catching like 30, 40 fish in a foot and a half of water in the first hour of the morning.
Yeah,
it was a portion of the lake deal and a bait deal. And the group of guys that had that said it was like the greatest fishing of their lives.
Which therein lies a flaw to how I fished on that second tournament. When we're talking about leading the points, but I'm not by a lot, 19 or whatever, like even another pound or two could give me 20 or 30 more points in the standings. And keeping my mind open on that day two to go try something different for 2 or 3 hours.
Yes, I disagree. See, a pound or two less puts you in 100th.
That's true.
You knew that you could do 13 pounds a day, that you would stay up in there. You took your medicine. It was like the first time ever that you hadn't cashed a check in like years. And that's 60th. If it's 100th, you don't have a lead now. You're not leading the dang thing.
I mean, that part's true too. And to be fair, I was catching bigger fish than that in practice.
Yeah.
And I feel like if it's an open water tournament and like everybody's doing the open water thing, whether it's a Kitech or even pre-live scoping, we've had open water things, right?
Yeah.
If it's an open water deal, I feel like I have a strength and advantage that other people, because I've spent a lot more time doing it, and I do enjoy it. So you just lean on those, and then by the end of the day, you just haven't had the bites that you didn't come across the ones that you thought you were going to have.
James River. So I think in order to have a good year, you have to have some magical stuff happen. And I don't want to use the term luck.
Oh, go ahead. Throw some
I feel like you have to get lucky sometimes.
Yeah.
And I feel like for you, based on what I know, the James River was a mixture of good planning, luck, and the importance of running with guys that you can trust.
Oh, dude.
Have you talked about this?
A little bit, not in depth.
I know Brad hasn't talked. Are you okay talking about it?
100%.
It's not a bad deal at all.
100%. Like, and what you're talking about here is, which kind of alludes to some of the other stuff that's going on in the world right now with information and sharing and things like that. I'm not a big information guy. I don't want a lot of information from a lot of people. And it literally has nothing to do with the same facts as everybody's talking about, publicly on all the forums and stuff right now. It has to do with, it messes me up. I don't fish as well. I'm trying to chase other people's fish. I don't care how good
changes
fishing.
your baseline.
Anytime I've ever talked to you and you're like, hey, John, they're doing this, I can't go do it. Like, I've never been able to just go do what other people are doing.
Yeah.
Because I think, maybe it's the way I break things down analytically. Like, I have to go through this process to get to this conclusion, and I can't just luck into that bite for me to put that and string that pattern together and together and together and together. And so I've learned that about myself. I've learned, I make the comment that you got to make yourself uncomfortable to be comfortable. This is one of the things I've talked with Kevin Rogers about all the time. Mm-hmm. And, just because.
Must have been a hell of a talk with the year he's having.
Well, back and forth. It's like, you got to make yourself uncomfortable. Bradley and we've talked about it too. And what we mean by that is, like, if you go into an event, if I go in there with too much information, predetermined of what I'm going to do, I think I'm all comfortable, and I don't give myself. I've put blinders on that I didn't know that I needed to put on, and so you go into the event not knowing. Not knowing as much as other people do about a certain area or location or how things have been won. I study a lot on stats about what the lake has to offer as far as weight wise. I kind of know a baseline of what I need to make a top 40, a top 10, and to win. Those are the three stats that I study all the time. And I do a lot of historical studies on different tournaments and stuff. So I'm like, okay, this is the class of fish that lives here. It looks like they're growing, so they may need to be bigger. Those are the things I need to be aware of, right? So going into the James River, I had understood that, about 15 pounds a day was going to be decent, but it also wasn't going to be good enough to do tremendous. Mm-hmm. It was going to be decent. And so a friend of mine had told me about a creek that you could potentially catch, 12 pounds in. And so I started out in that creek and practiced. And I got on a spinnerbait deal, and I took that pattern, and I was like, okay, so I went exploring other creeks that I'd never been into, and I'm catching them pretty good in practice, pretty easily. Mm-hmm. I'd never caught a fish over 3.5 in practice. Never even saw one. until the final day of practice, I did have a 4 come up and grab the spinnerbait and throw it off. So I did a lot of spinnerbait and backwater stuff and buzzbait and stuff like that in practice. I went into the area that river arm that everybody goes to, the one that's known for the big Florida strain fish.
Chickahominy?
Yeah. I practiced in there.
That's God's country, John.
I practiced there in the day and a half. And,
Don't say anything bad about the Chickahominy. I love that place. That's one of my top 3 favorite places on earth. I have not cashed a check there yet.
It was the day of rest when we were there. I promise you that. Like they were resting. They were letting the manna fall or something, like, because it wasn't on fire like everybody thought it was.
All right.
Now I'm sure that someone did get out of it, but for me it was too much of a strain, too much of a risk to make that long run down. So I did practice day and a half in there, and I eliminated that, like literally cut that out of my head. I'm not going. Maybe I'll go if I get a big sack kind of thing early and I want to go maybe try for a giant. Now I say that also, you've got experience there. I've never had experience. So this year, the 15 events that we're fishing between the NPFL and the Opens, I've only been to one of them and competed, and that's Sam Rayburn.
Yeah.
So these are all new to me. I will repeat Hartwell and I'll repeat Toho before the year's over between the NPFL and the Open, go into the same. But back to what we're talking about in the James. I got on a flip and bite. The 3rd day of practice, I went up into an arm that's known for dangerous water, shallow water. I got the aluminum boat. And I had known Bradley had been up there in practice because we were rooming together somewhere up this 30-mile arm. He'd been up there. And so I'm working around. I run into Keith Boucher. I run into Kent Kimura and everything like that. And I'm starting to get a couple bites. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting a flip and bite going now. I'm feeling it. And I'm like, these feel like bedding fish bites, But we got the tidal thing, and I'm trying to figure out the tidal thing. It's my first time on tidal water, going up and down and stuff. And then the water getting dirty. So I'm not seeing them at all, but I'm getting bites along the logs. The same way I'm getting the spinnerbait bite, I'm getting this, like, flipping a little stick bait bite. And Bradley calls me, and we just check in. Hey, man, how's it going? I'm like, I just got stuck on a sandbar. I had to push myself off, we're talking. He's like, you got any bites? I'm like, yeah, I got a couple bites. He's like, where are you at? And I said, I'm up in this arm. And he said, I'm going to give you a waypoint, man. It's the juice. You need to go look at this. And I put it in my, and this is all legal. We're competing with each other.
Competitors are in the tournament together. Everyone talks with everyone in the tournament. Yeah.
So I drop a waypoint, and I'm like, dude, that's where I'm at right now. He's like, you see this? I'm like, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. He's like, you got a bit? And I'm like, yeah, I've caught a couple. He said, dude, they're in there. Don't set the hook anymore. And there was like 7 other boats in there, and it's a little bitty backwater area. And so I just started, I just idled the rest of it to get a good visual on it. There's still enough there that you typically would practice in there. But, I took Bradley's golden advice, like it was gold, and I didn't practice in there. And so after the practice, Bradley and I, both talked about it, and we knew we both kind of basically found the same fish. Different rates, different days or whatever.
Yeah.
But being respectful to each other, I didn't go in there and beat up on his, but he had caught a couple 4s in there in practice, so he knew the size was there. That was the key, the size. I had not caught anything over 3. He said he saw 2 4s. And I drew a low boat number on day 1. I can't remember what boat number it was, but I'm going to say it was in top 17 or something. It was a low number. Yeah. And Bradley was high. And Bradley looked at me. We're sitting around the table that night, and he's like, dude, you need to go. I'm like, you think? He's like, 100%. I was like, yeah, I've been thinking about it too. I do need to kind of take a gamble at it. Basically go fish an area that I didn't even practice in. Mm-hmm. So I go in there on day 1, and, I'd already patterned that the fish were probably spawning, and all of a sudden the water drops down and the water clears up, and it was just one of those things. It was just like I could just see them everywhere, and there was a lot of boats around, but they weren't bed fishing. And so I ended up landing on them, caught the snot out of them, and bed fishing. And I think about noon or 1, I boat flipped a 6-pounder. The female, I caught the male, and I came back, and I couldn't really see the female, but I figured she was there, and I ended up getting her because the tide came up. And so I caught her, and when I did that, on my scales, I had like 21-something pounds.
Wow.
And in hindsight, I wish I would have stayed in there and pounded them more, because I thought, I'm going to leave this thing for tomorrow. Well, there were 7 other boats, 10 other boats in there, and they all saw me, and they all saw me in the standings, and they knew. So what happened is I'm in the top 5 or something after day 1. Day 2, I go back in there, and those guys that had seen me in there were literally power pulled down right where I'd been fishing. All of a sudden, everybody's sight fishing. And I got 2 fish out of there. I got 1 bed fish, and I got 1 buzzbait fish, and then I had to salvage the day and figure out what to do. So I went to that Confidence Creek.
Yeah.
that I found in practice on day one with a spinner bait, and this creek had a bunch of 2-pounders in there. That's it. And I'm fishing around now. I understand there's a little bit more spawning going on, so I'm being a little bit more like on the stumps. I'm making 10 casts to a stump instead of 1, and so I'm slowly working down this bank, and I'm actually, dude, I don't even have my limit yet. My co-angler's with me, and I'm throwing fish back that I'm catching, and my co-angler looks at me, he's like, why are you throwing those back? I'm like, oh, they're not 14 inches. It's
That's
just
12 inch.
Yeah, dude. He's like, dude, it's 12 inches. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So now I'm like, you're at about that noontime period. You feel like you're throwing your whole season away, right? And now you're like throwing keepers back. You've only got, and I'm like, take a deep breath. And dude, my next fish was like a 6-pounder on that spinner bait. And it was on a stump. I have a repetitive cast to it. I fill out my limit, go down the bank. I come back to that stump, and I think, man, maybe the male's there. So I power pull down. I fish that stump, fish that stump, fish that stump. It's barely where you can't see it, and boom, like a 3.5, 4-pound male, 3.5, something like that, eats it. And so I end up salvaging the day, and I think I had like 17 pounds, 16, 17 pounds, something like that on day 2. So it was completely different from what was done on day 1.
And you say right by the ramp on day 3.
Day 3, which was completely different, I looked at the weights, and like being in the top 10 a few times, some of my regrets have been not swinging for it harder. And I felt like everything that I'd found on day 1 and 2 was burnt up. Like it wasn't, there was no chance I was going to catch 20. And those guys were catching like 22 pounds the prior day. So I knew I was going to need a huge sack. So I stayed around where there would be a bunch of fish, and I put, a pattern together, had about 13, 14 pounds, and I made, and I was cranking the river. And then I actually went up instead of down. I'd never been up.
Yeah.
So I went
by Jimmy Dean's house.
Yeah, actually.
It's got a big giant sausage logo out of red and white flowers.
I caught a good one in front of Jimmy Dean's house. I caught like a 4-pounder.
Really?
Yeah, and then I ended up ducking into a pocket that's right there, and I picked up the buzzbait, and I burned the whole thing up. I don't know how many miles it is. I burned the whole thing up. I have one eat at the buzzbait, but when I do, I found one bed. And I worked this thing forever. I couldn't get him to bite. The water was down real low, and when it's down, the tidal water's down, those fish won't sit on the bed.
They get antsy, don't they?
Sit off of it.
Yeah.
So I mess with it too much. I leave. I come back. The water's up now, and I flip in there. My marshal's with me and everything. And this male that I'd messed with had obvious black marks all over it, right? Obvious. Like it was one of those cool-looking fish, right? And I said, yeah, he's set up right now. So I stay way back, and I flip in there. Boom. Set the hook. Boat flip it. And it's a 4-pounder. And he's like, it's not the same fish. Sure enough, the female had moved up. Water came up, the female came up. So I knew that 3-pounder wasn't going to help. So at that point, you got about 17 pounds. And I'm like, dude, I need big fish. So like, I need to go back to the main river and try to fish a little bit deeper with the crankbait, a little bit deeper. And I have 2 more bites at the end of the day. One is like the very last moment of the day. And the video got deleted somehow, but I might be able to find it on my cell phone or something like that. But I actually hooked this fish. And I had hooked this line several times in these casts before, like 3 different times I hooked this fishing line, and I had to go up and cut it. So now I'm frustrated. There's like 2 minutes left. People are checking in and stuff. So I throw back in there, and I feel the same feeling. I'm like, oh, dang, dude, I'm hung on a rock, or I'm hung on that line. No, it's a rock. And I'm like, I'm just cranking this thing in, and all of a sudden it starts moving down. It did not feel like a bass at all. Long story short, man, it ends up being almost a 7-pounder. It was a high 6. And so I weighed in, I think 22-something pounds. But, I mean, it was a tremendous day, tremendous tournament.
Just a lot of things went right.
I only ended up 3rd. It wasn't like I won, but I will say that if I could bottle the James River performance and put it into me every single, that's how you have to fish to make it to that.
You have like every element of tournament fishing in that. You have like working together with someone else. You have good decision making. Yeah. You have changing your game plan mid-tournament based on the conditions that you're faced. You have exploring new water, and you have a fortuitous catch in the last minute. That's like the perfect 5 things that everyone dreams happens in tournaments.
Yeah, it was definitely a blessing. And dude, then about that time is when a lot of hardships came my way as far as physically and stuff like this, like the toll of the tour and stuff like that. So we went from there. That was event 3. What was event 4?
Was Ross Barnett, which we kind of talked about that. That was the deal. You struggle, and then in the last half hour of each day, I remember I was checking in on stage, and you came up and had 10 something, and you said that was the most important day of your open season with a 10.5-pound limit on Ross Barnett.
Yep. So to make it real quick. Charlie Hartley, again, thank you. Day 1.
He's good, dude.
I'm struggling. I had a riprap bite going on with the spinnerbait. And I mean, I was catching a ton of fish. And day one, I start out with
on a spinnerbait.
Spinnerbait. Like
Really?
I said, just meat and potatoes, man.
God, how did I miss
I've got
that?
so many
Bridges,
buzzbait.
Marina, riprap, and ramps. I didn't fish any riprap.
For me, it's been the big jig, the buzzbait, and the spinnerbait this year. That's been my main.
Straight
And
power.
a jerk
Straight
bait.
power.
Yeah. So we start out doing that. I got 2 or 3 of them that grab on and jump off real quick. You know, they're doing the shad spawn thing where they're hitting it, not eating it. Good ones too, and then it dies. You know what I mean? And everybody's all over the bridges and stuff, so you don't have enough room to actually fish it. So struggling. Last part of the day, I decided to go in this one little pocket, which is a backwater thing that I really didn't think there was a lot of fish in there, but I knew I'd got 1 4-pound bite in there in practice, and so I thought maybe that fish was even maybe on a bed still. So I was going to go back to that one fish, and I go in this little cutback, idle back. You know, you burn all your time to idle back in there, and boom, there's Charlie Hartley. Now, I don't know it's Charlie at first, just because I didn't recognize him. And I pull up next to him, and I said, hey, man. And then I realized, oh, it's Charlie Turner. I said, hey, I got 1 fish up here, like 100 yards on the left. Can I go to that fish? And he said, absolutely. He said, how are you doing? I said, I'm doing horrible today. And I said, how are you? He's like, well, I got 5. And then he looks at me and he said something about, you are a great fisherman. You're going to, I mean, he's just like, and I was like, I am a good fisherman. It's like he pumped me up, like this Charlie Hartley speech. And you know what that guy did when I idled past him? He picked up his troll motor and left. He didn't even keep on fishing. Like, he gave me the whole area. And I don't know if people would understand, like, his experience and his, like, politeness to that, because I went back there and I caught a fish, and then I caught another one, and then no one else was back there. I think Dion Hibden ended up coming back in there a little bit. But
You just been fishing around classic champs and professionals and
kind of
winners and go. Okay.
Yeah, and so I ended up filling up my limit. It wasn't big, but I filled up my limit right there. That was day 1. Day 2, I try to repeat the process. I go back there, same thing, run into Charlie Hartley. He doesn't have him now, so I gave it. You know, I did try to return the favor, and I turned around and left. But then the last part of the day, the wind all of a sudden picked up, and there was like an hour left. And so I pulled the plug. I ran back to the rocks, ran into Jared Miller. Jared, I said, man, can I cut in? And he's like, yeah, dude. I was like, dude, I'm struggling. I've only got 2 fish. And then 15 minutes, boom, I caught like a 4, a 3, and like a 2, and filled my limit in like the last 15 minutes. And that was the end of the day. I might have caught 4 fish actually in the last 15 minutes. And then I had to load up and run back.
Fantastic.
So you go through all that drama and stress, and like you're not catching. You know, your mind. You've been fishing all season, 2 different tours and stuff like that, and you're sitting there thinking about like your kids at home, the ignoring work the way you've been doing. You know, what I mean, like you're throwing it all, like you're gonna throw it all away right here.
That's the pressure I did not expect last year being in it. Like this year being out of it, I did not realize the pressure that I felt in 2021 as it went further, and I was still on the outside looking in. But as people are like, "Hey, you got a shot. Hey, you had another good tournament. Hey, look at the points." Like it starts from the second you start getting ready for that open until the very last cast. And regardless, at least for me, regardless of how it is, as soon as the last cast of that open is made, it is a wild feeling on that second day because, you know, I didn't make any final day cuts last year, but idling in when you get your token in the net and you go, oh my gosh, I made it through this one. I survived this. It's like you don't even know how much anxiety, and I don't know, maybe that's just me. Do you feel that same way too? Is built up and then it's like all released the second it's over.
I have to work really hard at keeping myself positive at all times. So that way, when that anxiety comes, you can filter it out and see through the junk. Because anxiety gives you junk decisions, man. It gives you bad decisions. And I believe that something transfers from that stress into your hands, into that lure, and you just don't get as many bites when you're feeling that way. You just don't. And when you do, you miss the fish. Like you have to be positive. You have to be having fun. There's a lot of times, sometimes on the water, I will be doing something that I feel like is the right thing, but I'm just not having fun. I'm not enjoying the moment, and I'll stop and I'll pull the plug. I might not pull it permanently, but I got to go find my happy place and like make myself real. Dude, this is my joy. This is my passion. This is all I've ever wanted to do. My first word was fish. I can't even believe we have the opportunity to be a professional fisherman. I mean, you got to pinch yourself and to sit there and think that you're getting negative or like something in life's going to, I've got a healthy family and 4 kids at home and like, you know, a marriage almost 20 years now next year. And like
115 inches ruining all of that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And I'm telling you that, like, I really truly believe that staying positive and staying strong-willed, strong-minded is probably the number one difference between the average and the good fisherman, and then the good and the great. It's just a couple fine lines, and I think it's very important.
Awesome. Dude, we got to get a break in here. 50 minutes in. Like I said, recapping your season, but I think there's a lot of learning lessons in each one of these events. It's not just a season recap. It's the lessons inside of those tournaments that you've lived that I think you can kind of glean little pieces and parts from, apply it to your own fishing. So it is BTL on a Wednesday, August 3rd, with John Soukup, and we will be back right after this.
Your key to better fishing this season is Elite FS, now available at a new lower price. Get Elite FS 9 today for $9.99, and we'll throw in a C-Map reveal chart, our premium mapping solution, for free. Elite FS works with all state-of-the-art Lowrance sonar, from chirp, side scan, and down scan imaging with fish reveal to high-resolution active target live sonar. Elite FS9 and C-Map reveal. Offer ends August 31st.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
We're just about ready to go, ladies and gentlemen. Get in order.
Once again, Drew Cook is in the driver's seat.
When you're catching fish for a living, you can't let a little cold, rain, heat, humidity, or anything else get in the way of a payday. I wear APCO. Any fish, any water.
The KVD 100 Jerkbait. 15 different colors. A perfect combination of roll, wiggle, and flash. Increased castability. 3D eyes. Premium black nickel hooks. KVD. Tie one on. Striking lures.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
Have you considered purchasing new electronics for your rig? The type of mounts you choose to protect your investment should be part of the decision-making process. No matter if you prefer 1, 2, or 3 graphs up front, Beatdown Outdoors has a solution for you. Adjustable, versatile, rigid, and made in the USA. What's your ultimate electronic setup? Check out the full selection of Beatdown Outdoors products by visiting beatdownoutdoors.com. Welcome back, BTL on a Wednesday. Do I have a future in voiceover, John?
Yeah, it's so awesome to watch that Beatdown commercial with Brad being the NPFL. I've got a relationship with Beatdown. We install Beatdown mounts, so I'm really excited to see them come on here with you guys. That's awesome.
Listen, BTL, this goes back to Jeffries. We're like pretty transparent about like the sponsorships and all that. Like the only reason this show exists is, I mean, it's how I make my living. Are the sponsors, the ads we run every single show, relationships we have with those guys, so we can provide free content for you guys. So
it's not through Opens winnings.
No, I'd be under the I-44 bridge if it was based on Open's winnings. That was a low blow.
Oh, sorry.
Realize right here, I got a button right here. All I have to do is hit it. Now try to talk. Yeah, see, you're talking. Can't hear you there now. So, but anyway, and then this is the first year taking over. Mark Jeffries retired in December. He's now the head bowling coach at SNU University. All in on that. Cool. So, like, I had reached a point before ICAST where I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, it's just like the machine, right? The BTL thing, it's always going to be there. I'm always going to have my paycheck and all that. Well, I had like a come to Jesus meeting where I was like, dang, that's like all on me now. Like the sponsorships, the contracts and all that. Like it just doesn't, like you have to nurture culture, show your value and things like that. So
I had that when I was 17 when my dad gave me the boot. Said, so you're on your own.
Yeah, see, I was coddled, John. I was coddled. I didn't have that. But just as far as, running the business and all that. Yeah. So I will say you based after ICAST, I think BTL is going to be around for another 2 years at least. So we're good. But Beatdown Outdoors is one of the new sponsors they wanted to kind of jump on for the first or last half of this year, and then going forward into 2023. I met those guys at some of the outdoor media events. Good dudes, and they're trying to do some really unique stuff with graphs that I think originated in the crappie world, but like with guys like you and Kevin Rogers and a couple other kind of multi-species anglers are like, hey, these principles, especially with this is the only forward-facing sonar talk of the show, I promise, especially with the forward-facing sonar, these principles that we're using for these are very applicable to bass, and the graph mounts and the way that we're using our graphs make it way more efficient in the bass world. Is that a fair assessment of kind of like the evolution of where Beatdown was like, hey?
That's exactly where it came from. Kevin Rogers brought Blake Price and them up to my shop a couple years ago, and we started doing crappie, sales with them. And I was kind of always jealous, being 6'4", everybody's always cracking jokes about my back and leaning down, and you do have to have a different posture when you're doing a lot of live scoop and stuff. It's neat to take that big 16-inch screen and bring it up. Now, they have that ultimate one that goes really high.
Yeah.
I actually enjoy the ultimate shorty, which is like its little brother.
What's the is that the double stack that they're putting on my? Well, you guys are supposed to. I guess I have to call. I got a number to call the bass tank, so I have to take my current mount off and put the new Beatdown on. It's sitting in my garage right now. I'm super
excited. There's a double stack and a single stack.
Okay, I got the double stack.
Yeah, that just means you have 2 units that you can run on it.
Yeah, so I'll put my 2 units up front, and then I can use it like a regular graph.
Correct.
Well, a mount.
Right.
Like it is a regular graph mount. It's just got some new features.
You
but I can
lower down, but
I can lower it down all the way down so it looks like any standard graph mount that you would. It still swivels though.
Correct.
But then there's how long is the extension?
Depends on if you have an ultimate or an ultimate shorty. So
I think I have the ultimate shorty.
Yeah.
That's kind of the one that's
I don't remember the exact inches, but I feel like you can come up 18 to 24 inches or something like that.
So that brings my forward-facing sonar and my unit. So if I'm going to let's just say hypothetically at the Chesapeake, if I'm like, hey, I'm going to be using forward-facing sonar a lot here, and I'm going to be using it to put my bait in front of the fish, and I want to be able to see it, I will install or add that extension, and now it's kind of a waist level, thigh level, instead of having to scrunch down like you see in a lot of the videos that I do on my recaps. Now it's right there, and I have a better view,
right,
and it's more efficient.
It's way more efficient. I touch my screen a lot. I'm always adjusting my screen, so it's nice not to have to bend over as far. And also, you see things better. That's why the whole bigger screen thing's better, is because it has to do with the pixelation or clarity. A lot of people are talking about things that aren't even important. It's just the bigger screen. It's like when you watch the Super Bowl, you want to go to your buddy's house with the biggest screen. You're not watching it on a 12-inch monitor at your house. So bringing it up closer to your eyes makes whatever screen you have, even a 9-inch screen, actually bigger for you to be able to see more.
All right. We'll cover all the bases here with the Beatdown outdoor mounts jumping on board, and then we'll go right into your new stuff. And then we'll finish the year up, and then I want to, holy cow, we're an hour into this already. I want to go into what you've learned over the last couple years here. 2 NPFL wins, leading the Opens points, 3 Bass, I don't want to short you here, 3 Bassmaster Open top 10s?
Yeah, 3 in the last year.
3 in the last calendar year. Grand Lake, Kissimmee, and then James River. But 3 out of 4 in a stretch there. And we'll get into what you've learned. But you gave Brad and me and whoever else was around, so they didn't feel left out at the time, the new Bass Tank screen cleaner.
Yeah. I'm proud of it, man. Every once in a while we hit a home run. and effort. This stuff is. Try it out, man.
So I've
awesome.
used it, and I said on the show yesterday, I was like, you really can't like hype up a screen cleaner. It either works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And this stuff works. It smells good, 0 streaks. But I was shocked. So like, it's a bottle. It says the Bass Tank Screen Cleaner, Professional Series Marine. But I was shocked at like the process of which the first time I heard you mention this, and then to like get it in a bottle with a label on. It seems like just ridiculously hard to get anything from concept to market.
I think that when you are starting from the bottom like we did in anything in life, I've already started from the bottom, man, not had much to work with, not much to given to me. It's all about business. There's always a networking side to business. And when you don't have that network built yet, but you have good concepts, it's hard to make people believers out of you. They don't want to be because then they have to invest in something. So you have to continually prove yourself to people, prove it over. And so a lot of times when you're trying to prove things, they fall away, they get interested in something else. So it's taken us a long time to bring things from concept to actually to market for us. Way longer than I ever thought it was going to be. We've had things that have taken 3 years. And this is actually an idea that, 2.5, 3 years ago we wanted to do it. And we would try and fail. And then finally we got the right contacts together. The right volume amount. We had the right amount of money to save up because, a lot of times you're trying something, they're like, yeah, you find the way to get it created and bring it to market, but you're like, we'll try out 10. That doesn't work. They're like, no, you're going to have to try out 500 or we're not going to produce this product for you.
Holy cow.
Because everybody needs to make money. Makes sense, right? I mean, they can't just produce something. So, we finally had the chance to go all in. We found the right microfiber rag. We tried 4 or 5 different ones.
So how do you do that? What is there like a website like microfiberrags.com and you order like all of them from it? Or how do you find the right microfiber rag?
Well, there's microfiber rags are a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. They're even on Walmart.
So you just get on a bunch and say until you find one that works.
Yeah, we found. So I'm pretty anal when I'm live scoping, man. I'm always cleaning my screen. This is where
I'm not. I'm casting the water spots every third cast.
I can't stand that when I'm actually live scoping. I'm cleaning.
I'm like, there's one, and I'm like, I put it right past it. Oh, that fish is swimming away from the boat. Now it's a watermark.
Or you get a microfiber rag that works, but it only works once because it gets saturated. So this rag actually just continue. I've been out in a rainstorm and I could still use it. It's awesome. So yeah, you got the cleaner and the rag. They go together hand in hand.
Good stuff. It works.
It's
pretty much all you
can say. It's amazing.
I
literally have people that have put it in their windshield wiper fluid, so that way their car smells good it's got like this new car smell. It's amazing. The smell is amazing.
You want to go Ron Popeil and say that you will catch more bass if you use this screen cleaner. Anyway, I've been teasing this for a while. We are going to do a giveaway, and we're going to do a proper giveaway to where John hires people to actually box and send stuff out on time. It's not going to be me going to the post office because John and I have talked about we all have shortcomings. One of mine is mailing things.
I'm going to get a video of Matt shipping this out to you.
But no, so like I said, we're gonna go through some more stuff for the show. We're gonna take a couple questions at the end of the show. Then I'll randomly pick a question from the instant feedback today, either on YouTube or the site, and we'll email. You can email your contact info. So if you remember a couple months ago, we had Scott Palmer, and we did a real in-depth kind of 2D side imaging show on exactly how that works, how it's stitched together, the transducers, everything. And he basically, whenever a bass tank is on BTL, they're like inundated with calls and questions and stuff. So he said, hey, if you're not hey, I'd like to call and order this, because that's like your business line, right? He set up an email specifically for BTL listeners for electronics questions, for graph questions, and Scott, who is partners with you at the Bass Tank.
Yeah, we call him the mad scientist.
He's the mad scientist. He knows everything. Like he knows how it works. Like he could take apart a graph and put it together on his own time, in between fishing and running the Bass Tank as well, and doing the R&D and the development, sits and answers all these questions for you. So that is questions@thebasstank.com.
Yeah, definitely let us know.
And I know we had a great response last time, which was good for the Bass Tank and good for BTL too. So if you have graph questions, but when we do the giveaway at the end, I'll repeat it again. You'll just email your info to questions@thebasstank.com. All right, you want to get back to just finish things out here then most recently.
Are we going to give one of those away?
Yeah, we're going to give away towards the end of the show.
Sweet.
Yeah, we got another. We're going to do a longer show today. You good with that?
Oh, yeah.
You have to get back?
No, I love talking fishing. We still talking fishing?
Yeah, we're going to get back. We're going to wrap the season up with the latest at Oneida, and then I want to go back and dive into something that you said. I've mentioned it probably 5 or 6 times on the show before, but I've never actually pulled it up, and I want to go through this theory with you in depth. So, Oneida, just a solid event, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish, I look back and I see where I need to improve on things, but I'm learning these things. I've never been up north. I've never fished on Oneida or anything like that. So I started out doing what I know. I've been asked this, and I just was on with Kurt Dove the other day.
And went way more into techniques and stuff with Kurt, correct?
Yeah, so I'm asking, like, the question gets asked all the time. You're a live scoper. That's what your favorite thing is. That's what I'm known for, but that's not necessarily my favorite way to fish. Now, now that being said, in the wintertime, if I have a chance to go catch a 10 to 12 pounder, and I know I'm going to be able to do it on live scoop, you're not going to see me up throwing a frog in December. But if you told me, John, you're going to catch an 8 pounder on a live scope or 8 pounder on a frog, I'm choosing the frog day in and day out. I love to fish shallow. We didn't have anything. We didn't have any boats when I was young. This is back to my roots, jumping mini boats, belly boats, wading creeks. That's the way I love to fish. So, but when I go to these waters that I've never been in before, I'm going to look for what I feel like is my uppercut, my power punch, and that is my ability to live scope. So I know that I have an advantage on some people, so I'm going to look for it first. And so that's basically what I did at Oneida. The first opportunity I had, put the trolling motor down, boom, caught some fish really quickly on day one doing it, and then I went out doing the shoal thing that a lot of people did. And it took me, a solid 2 days to figure out how to catch a fish out there doing that.
But you did a combo deal in the tournament, right?
Mm-hmm.
You combined some shoal fish, some shallow fish, some live scope fish, some grass fish.
Right. Some topwater fish. So, like, one big one, matter of fact, not today one. But when I say it took me 2 days to figure out how to, I can catch a fish on a rock pile.
Yeah.
But what we need to talk about is the boat control in the 20-mile-an-hour winds with the 4-foot waves.
During practice.
How do you catch them during those? And so that's what took me the time. They're out here. I can't just graph hardly. I got to fish some of this stuff. I can't hold my boat in one position. How do you do that? And so that's something that I hadn't had a lot of experience with. So it took me a couple days to figure out how to get some bites. I did that. They were bigger, but I didn't feel like I could guarantee myself that I was even going to get 5 doing it. I didn't have that confidence built in myself. And it was funny. When I did find an area that I was like, I'm feeling pretty good about this, then Andrew Upshaw came up and he's like, hey, man, this is one of my best spots. I was like, okay. I'm sorry. I'll be respectful and leave it. So you have that happen sometimes. So, yeah, I mean, Oneida for me was in the early morning was open water fish, getting in and around the grass edges, swim baiting, jerk baiting. I think those fish were up on like maybe the alewives. I don't know what they are, a bait fish of perch and alewives in the morning. And then once that sun came up, I think they turned heavily to and they got on the
goby trade.
The goby candy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think once they're locked into the goby, the wind can come back up, the rain can come back in, the clouds can come back over. They ain't going to leave. They're going to stay right back down there. And so that was a little bit of my difficulty. Now, I had a pretty good limit on day one. I lost a bunch of fish like you guys did on day one. I mean, just my first 5 keepers, I think I lost. It was pretty bad morning. I think at one point I was like 2 fish in the well and like 5 missed. And so, try to stay positive. Got about 14 pounds. Was feeling pretty good about myself with 14 pounds.
Yeah.
And had a co-angler that he was like, hey, man, we've been catching them here and there, and I thought, I'll go try some stuff. So we ran some of his water without some success, and then I was like, dude, we're just going to go cover some water. So we went covering some water, and at the very end, for like the last hour, and I caught a good 3.5 up pretty shallow on top, and somehow I end up out of my day. Oh, dude, I caught 2 on a hair jig. One of them.
First 2 you've ever caught in a hair jig?
No.
In a tournament?
No, remember I fished some crappie tournaments, so I've caught some fish
in bass tournament.
Yeah. No, not necessarily.
Oh, that's in your arsenal.
Yeah.
Like you're comfortable with a hair jig, with a marabou jig.
100%.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So one thing that happened, though, was I had this magic 5-pound largemouth show up on a hair jig on a 15-foot rock pile.
What?
Yeah, man. I just was swimming that thing, and some fish were falling on it, and I was like, oh, that must be trash fish. And I'd been fishing that way for an hour without getting a bite, and I'd caught a 3.5-pound smallie doing it earlier, so I was like, that was what at that time was my biggest one of the day. So I was like, I got to stick with this and see. And I'm like, I'm going to let this thing get a little closer to the bottom and see what happens. And it just stopped, and I pull into it. And, of course, it looks like a 6 because they're all spawned out and skinny.
Gosh.
So, yeah, 6-pound test line, 1/8-ounce black hair jig, caught, nearly a 5-pounder largemouth.
That's
so
fantastic.
So, yeah, day 1 was good, man. Day 1 was good. Day 2, I thought maybe I unlocked some shallow thing, and I tried to unlock it again. And what ended up happening was my co-angler on day 2 was a tremendous fisherman, and he was back there dragging a tube, basically trolling a tube behind me when I was trolling motoring high in the shallow water, and he's just whacking them. And it just distracted me. I could never put that pattern back together. The fish were no longer suspended. There was no jerkbait fish to be had. The fish that I did catch were out in the middle of the bottom, in the middle of nowhere.
I think there was a mayfly hatch on day 2. I really think that the mayfly hatch on day 2 pulled those fish that were relating to the cover in the bottom and pulled them off, suspended over open water.
See, I never even saw that.
Pulled them up real high.
I never even saw it. No, I never saw anything in that regard.
I was very aware of it and unable to capitalize. That's a bad combination.
But that's where I missed. So day 2, I tried to go up in that shallow stuff. He's catching, so I'd stop and try to fish, drag something real shallow with him and some of these rocks. So I was putting together there were some shallow fish. But, man, when you look down, you're from Oklahoma, and you can see the bottom, and you look around, you're like, there's no fish here. Mm-hmm. And I think that's my biggest error was not having the confidence to fish in that shallow stuff because I ended up catching –
They were there.
I went out to the shackles or the shoals or whatever you call
Shackleton
it.
shoals?
Yeah.
The shackles.
The shackles.
It felt like shackles at times.
I gave myself 1 hour at the end of the day, and I went out there and popped a 4-pounder. I wish I'd give myself a couple more hours and actually done it because I didn't do that all on day 1. So – I kind of got torn a little bit between, and then, I fell from 20th to 46. 46 sounds good, but, man.
46 is good, John.
Yeah.
46 is good. All right, so that's a recap of the year. I want to go through I want you to look back on the last 2 years because the last 2 years are really you've made some Bass Nation championships. You fished a lot of big stuff, but really last year with the inaugural year of the NPFL, and then jumping into a couple opens, and then this year going full bore with all opens and the NPFL. It's really only like your second, would you say, year of quote unquote touring?
Yeah, for sure.
And have not fished
subtracted crop a year.
Yeah, we're subtracting that. But have not fished the pro circuit, have not fished the Elite Series, nothing have not. You fish a Forest Wood Cup that you made through the
Costas Championship.
So you have some big experience, but touring. So looking back from 2 years, what do you think in general, if you were to say what's the biggest thing you've learned or what's the biggest learning curve over the last 2 years that you thought you had figured out 2 years ago, and the more you get into this to right now today, you're like, boy, this has been the hardest thing to learn?
Some of this is going to be cliche things, but it's not. It sounded cliche, but it's not. Keeping things simple, staying organized, not overthinking, having your life right. I'm not the guy out at the bars. I'm sleeping good. I'm eating good. I'm healthy. I have a beautiful home life. I know that all sounds silly, but if you're going to try to do this and you don't have that stuff in order, that is going to be a burden and pressure because I've got a lot of business burden and pressure that I've had to deal with, that I have to deal with daily with the several businesses that I own and operate. That stuff will get in your way and clog your head enough. You don't need that other stress. I see people who mentally just aren't ready. Now, I think they can catch a fish like crazy, but they can't. So, the cliche side of it, the mental preparation I think is just I can't even put into words how important it is. I can sit around people and I know that they're weak. You know what I mean? They're weak. They're mentally weak. They can't make it. And unless they have a big break in life, and hopefully that comes, they got some preparation to happen to be able to get there. I'm hardened a little bit. I'm 40 years old. I've been through a lot of different things in life, in and outside of business, and that affects your fishing. And so I know that that's an off-topic subject. We're not talking about techniques or anything like that. But I think that that's probably the one biggest thing that probably isn't talked about enough to help anglers actually get their stuff in order and get prepared to be able to do this, which I think that's one of the things that Bass Opens is trying to do in their decision, whether you agree or disagree with the 9, the spots going to the overall. I think that's what they're trying to do because I think they recognize that. I think.
Yeah. Outside of it, also, you started your YouTube channel, then it grew, and it got hacked, and then all this stuff got deleted, and you brought it up, and then I've not ever seen you really stressed out, but over the last couple months too, I think that stressed you out. The social media side of it, the person side of it, and the online, that's something that for me seems natural because I grew up in it, right? I've been doing it since I was 22, 23. But like, you haven't had people who cared about what you did in an Oklahoma Bass Nation 3 years ago and didn't grow up under it. And boom, you win, you have the bass tank, you start it. And now it's instantly, you're an entity. We've talked about this before. Like, I mean, that's the reality of what it is. You're a one-person entity, right, with a lot around it.
So you're right. I'll just dive into it, man. Like I have let people go from underneath my brands for how they treated other people, and a lot of that's on social media and stuff of that nature. And I have not been prepared for that world. I did it because I knew I had to. I never even had social media until some of my contracts told me I had to, like around the Forest Wood Cup time.
Wow.
And so that's when I started doing it. I really didn't want to be involved with social media too much. And so, you do it. Anything you do, I try to do the best I can. I mean, it's not like we have the biggest social media, but we're doing our best. We built the bass tank around some social media.
Great social media content on that. Incredible.
And then, you have some success. But all the way up, man, listen, I had guys calling me a cheater when I was winning jackpots all the time. I had Bass Nation stuff. I got disqualified for some stuff that I think is like, kind of shady on that side. But you put your head down, you live through it. So every level you've had different accusations, different things. And it stings at that time. But when you have, I wasn't prepared for like the love that I have for fishing. Just that's all I want to do is just fish. Like I'm just like everybody else. I would love to not have to do social media. I would love to not have to work as hard at my sponsors and stuff like that. I would love to just be able to go and just fish. But I recognize, because it's my dream, that there's not a path out there that allows you to do that. So you have to do these things. You have to work on all these things. And so I was a little like, little bubbly boy, a little naive, win a couple tournaments. Hey, everybody's going to love me. And then I realized how much you have to dot your I's and cross your T's, because if you put anything out there that can be construed to be what it's not, they're going to take it and they're going to attack you. And I've had to put on my big boy panties, man. I've had to go back and realize, hey, man, I've got my feelings hurt a little bit with some of the attacks and stuff like that. But the truth is, man, I think it's a major distraction that I'm having to fight through and work through. So that has been the biggest, hardest learning curve, is focusing on the positivity, the people around you that are going to provoke in the right way to push you, because I don't want any distractions that will allow me, inhibit me of fishing the best that I can, especially in the last 8 events of the Opens, last 8 days. In my mind, I got 8 days. 4 events, 8 days is what I got to make the elites. And so that has been the biggest recent challenge. You're right. Like, you're absolutely right. And so I don't like the negativity that's out there. I don't like, not that I haven't made my own mistakes, and I haven't made a post before about somebody that I shouldn't have, and like had to ask for forgiveness, and like that was wrong, I shouldn't have done.
Hey, I did a show. Mark Jeffries ran this show for 17 years. I know what it's like to do something with passion.
Yeah.
I told him the other day, I said, dang, I said, I'm becoming you. And I said, why? I said, I'm over here getting fired up for no reason. I said, I'm over here throwing my pen and stuff. And I said, I'm becoming you, Mark.
The guys that don't have that don't know what it's like to have skin in the game.
That's what I said. Now I'm starting to understand the sweat equity and to start from nothing and then to build it up. And I understand you have a tendency to maybe take something more personally than if something was just handed to you, or it just is there and you don't understand how it got there.
Yeah. So, I don't know if I'm entering this. It feels weird. I'm going to take some of your word, but it feels like I'm entering a little bit of a realm where, you know, the name John Soukup isn't really attached to a person anymore. It's like making fun of the Buffalo Bills because they haven't won. You know, like we do it, but we don't.
And
like,
that's a
I would
social
never
media
try
thing.
to attack anybody at the Buffalo Bills, you know what I mean? Or the Dallas Cowboys or anything of that nature. You know what I mean? Like, we just make our jokes and go on. But, you know, I'm still at that point where I'm transitioning from, well, I mean, that kind of hurts my feelings. You know, like, you know.
You had to come to the realization where people, there are eyeballs on you. And there's a difference between posting it and doing your own thing. And then all of a sudden, well, I mean, you did it with success. You did it with 3 out of 4 opens in the top 10. Bassmaster. I mean, you started a YouTube channel called The Hookup with John Soukup. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've got your trophies at everything saying, hey, check out. These are my NPFL trophies that I earned, that you rightfully do. You have all this, but there's that moment where you realize, man, what I'm doing, there's a lot of eyeballs that are watching this.
Yeah, you don't realize it.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not like everybody's giving you a like or, you know what I mean? Like, so, and I guess I would say the inside, I wish that I could take the inside fishing world of the politics of the fishing world and just like, I wish it could just go away and not exist. You know, whether it's off brands competing against each other or just or different leagues competing against each other. Mm-hmm. Like, I just really, truly am going to take a deep breath through this end of this year and get back to the love of fishing. In 2018, with my dad giving cancer and passing away, I regained that. I was revitalized in fishing because it just connected me back to my father that I had lost. And I fished great, had tremendous success in business and everything. And I've kind of carried that through these last 2 or 3 years. And then you kind of get to that, okay, now you're back in the trenches again. It's back to hard work. And then, you know, you have a choice at times. Every day you have a choice. Am I going to take this thing positive or am I going to take this thing negative? And, you know, when you got somebody that's hurting your feelings or something that's out there hurting feelings, it's easy to want to go negative. But the truth is, I really feel like that will affect my fishing. Mm-hmm. I know that seems silly, but if I get distracted so much by this thing over here.
No, we talked about the positive attitude, the mental, the being in a good state on the water leads to good decisions. Yeah. Like, I thought it would affect you. I told Brad, I said, I think it's an uphill climb for the rest of the year for John. I said, this thing's gotten in his head. Because you said it did.
It did. And it felt good to go out to Saginaw Bay and smash 100 fish on camera in front of everybody. You know what I mean? Like,
where you literally can't see the water. Just out in a cow pasture.
Yeah, yeah. And I need more of that in my life. And that's what I'm hunting for. Is more of that. Because that's where the joy's at, man. All this other stuff, we're having fun. We love to talk about fishing, all these the different comments. It all comes from the basic root. We all have one thing in common, whether we agree with each other, don't agree, or like each other or not. We love fishing. And we love green fish. For some reason, we love bass fishing. And so that's what I want to talk about is bass fishing and the purity of it. And I will say, man, the purity of it to me means following all the rules in every single way. Yeah, I'm a purist, man. Like we at the Bass Tank, like integrity of we do things right or we don't do it at all. That's how in the construction world, when I was in the construction, you know, heavily, that's what I did too. My flooring, like we did it right or we didn't do it, which got me in a lot of trouble. It gets you in a lot of trouble. It's not just in the fishing world; it's in everything that's out there. Everybody's trying to cut corners. And sometimes you just got to stand on what's right and do what's right, and it's not the popular thing.
I think that's applicable outside of fishing. Like I said, we've talked this too. It's not the fishing world. It's like you said. It's that. I think everybody listening to this can apply that to their profession or family life.
I think that's the long-term success. Yeah. I think you can have some short-term success being nasty, but not long-term.
All right, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, I still want to get back. I want to get back to the fishing. It's like I want to get back to the fishing with this theory, but I actually pulled the theory up. It has to do with cognitive bias, inattentional blindness. I talked about it yesterday. I hadn't talked about it for a year, and then I was on that bandwagon for the last 2 or 3 years. I want to dive into it, get your thoughts on it. Then I want to take a couple fishing related questions for John to help you guys catch more fish, and then we'll give away the Bass Tank screen cleaner, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll get it in under 2 hours. It's BTL on a Wednesday with John Soukup from, what do you want to be called? John Soukup from the Bass Tank, Opens angler, NPFL angler?
Yeah, show like the love to the Bass Tank.
All right.
That's where the homies are at.
With the Bass Tanks, John Soukup.
Vibrating jigs are a great choice for any time of year, and the Kamikaze Swim On is a perfect match for any vibrating jig. 2 sizes and the unique tail design gives it a bait fish profile and a great swimming action for realism. There are 17 colors. See them all at bigbitebaits.com. The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Combining one of the most popular hook styles with Gamakatsu's beefier Superline offering, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend delivers the strength necessary to target big fish in heavy cover. Well suited for braided line and heavier fluorocarbon, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend is built using stronger Superline wire that allows anglers to easily fish a finesse worm around heavy cover. The round bend offers a larger bite area, perfect for any worm presentation, while increasing your hookup ratios. The newly enhanced Z-bend holds your plastics on the hook longer, reducing the number of pull-offs and reducing damage to plastics. Available in 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, this is the most durable worm hook, designed for heavier lines that hold your bait on longer.
Preparation is key to success. And that preparation starts well before you ever hit the water. You're only as strong as your connection to the fish, and your line is that critical connection. Confidence in your line every minute of every day on the water is a necessity, and failure, it's not an option. Sunline makes the fluorocarbon, nylon, and braided lines to give you the strength to guarantee your confidence.
The new Android series is the peak of the Denali lineup and offers the ultimate Denali experience. The Android series features 36-ton multi-directional graphite combined with interlock blank technology for added strength. Each rod is outfitted with Royal titanium guides that will not fail. The blank is fitted into an easy-touch, soft-feel EVA foam grip with exposed blank reel seat. This all allows the Android to transmit every movement of your bait and even the most subtle bites. The Android series is the finest rod Denali has ever made and offers an angler the ultimate fishing experience with a limited lifetime warranty. See the full lineup of Android rods at denalirods.com.
Welcome back. Final segment of BTL on a Wednesday with John Soukup. All right, I'm actually going to get into this with someone. This is on simplypsychology.org. And I don't think I've ever actually dove into it. I've just like talked about it and spewed key words and phrases.
I don't know big words, bro. I'm an Okie, so dumb it
okay.
down for me.
Inattentional blindness. You mentioned this on one of the tournaments. Also called perceptual blindness is the failure to notice something that is completely visible because of lack of attention.
That makes sense.
The phenomenon
We call that being open-minded.
was discovered in the 1970s, introduced at a concept in 1992 by Irvin Rock. What a name. And Arian Mack. Consequences of inattentional blindness in the real world may include automobile collisions, aircraft accidents, material threats to safety of police officers. What is inattentional blindness? Inattentional blindness occurs when one fails to notice a readily visible yet unexpected visual stimulus in one's sight. This temporary unawareness is likely to stem from an abundance of visual stimuli meriting one's notice. In such scenario, one may fail to perceive even salient yet unanticipated objects. The observer fails to recognize a visual event or object. The optic stimulus is fully visible. The stimulus would be readily identifiable if the observer were to consciously notice it, and the stimulus is unanticipated, and the failure to recognize it stems from a collapse of attention and not from any drawbacks of the visual scene or optic stimulus.
Yeah, so like when you're driving and you go daydreaming and then all of a sudden there's a dog or another vehicle on the road that you obviously should have seen because your eyes can see it, but your brain wasn't telling you to react to it.
Now let's apply this to fishing.
Yeah, 100%. I think that we call it being open-minded. Like when you go, and I talked about it at the beginning of the show, when you go into an event and you have too much preconceived notions, you can just run those preconceived notions in the ground and miss the complete obvious thing because you didn't keep yourself open-minded to explore and to eliminate other waters. You eliminated it already. Bradley and you guys talked about this, missing that whole shallow water bite at Oneida.
Didn't even see the shoal and think of to fish it out in front of the house, 50 yards in front of the house. How the heck does that happen?
You had preconceived notions that you were just gonna. This is how it's gonna happen, and it's so preconceived that you're so focused on it, right? You're so focused on it that you can't use your sixth sense of fishing. You can't use that touch, taste, smell, whatever that sixth sense is that comes in and tells you, hey, go try this.
Mm-hmm. This is basically, from what I can conclude, Iaconelli, instead of saying Fish the Moment, or Johnny Schultz with his Fish the Moment channel, might as well just rename it Be Cognizantly Aware of Inattentional Blindness.
Yeah.
That is what Fish the Moment. That is what it's all about. The attitude. That is what open-minded. That is what you describe when you say fishing your happy place, changing sceneries, doing something completely different. Phil Dutra talked about it yesterday, which is what jogged the memory on how he'll just run 20 miles and start doing something different. It is all surrounded around this psychological theory.
Yeah.
And if you can be aware of it, I think you can stop it. And that's the hardest thing to do in the moment, though, is because as human beings, we are trained to say this is important, this is what we're going to focus on. And as long as it is not a threat to our health or our family, I think I don't, when you have inattentional blindness, other patterns don't exist.
Yeah, I agree. And then there's also kind of the opposite of that, which connects in, is where if being aware of our human innate ability, like as a fisherman, for our mind and body, our subconscious to tell us what to do before our brain actually tells us what to do, if that makes sense. Before we literally get it into our conscious brain to say, okay, I'm going to do this. And a lot of times when we're so blocked out and focused on one thing, we're just ignoring that thought in your mind. And I think a lot of the great fishermen and a lot of my successes come when I've gone ahead and listened to that. And it's weird because it's unexplainable how many times you'll get this thought, you'll pick up one lure and you'll catch a giant on it, and you'll never catch another fish the rest of the day on that. And then all of a sudden you have another thought to do this, and boom, you catch a fish. And it's being able to be tuned into all that. You've had all these thousands of hours on the water, all this time that you've spent, and your subconscious has that understanding too. And you have to be able to stay tuned into that. And you will block that part of your ability out if you're too over focused on one thing.
So this is a Ulrich Neisser deal. So I was a communications major, so like I went through all this stuff. It's like easy to pass courses and you can get your degree. but it doesn't involve.
I want to know.
It doesn't involve Spanish or math, communications degrees, or chemistry. Those are the three things. Well, mainly Spanish and chemistry. I could handle math, but communications does not. Aside, once you get Spanish out of the way, you're prereqs. So that's one of the reasons why I was a communications major. And that actually is kind of what I do. So it said the earliest discovery of this phenomenon, this is exactly what you just said, seemed to have been made by the father of cognitive psychology in the 1970s. In a research study, they concluded that participants watched two superimposed yet distinctive videos of individuals engaged in various activities, throwing a basketball or hand slapping. When the participants fixed their attention on one event, an unexpected occurrence in the other event was more likely to evade their notice. So when you're saying, so this is when you're fishing well, I'm fishing good. I'm making good decisions. I'm not even thinking about these decisions.
You're open-minded almost.
I'm open-minded. I'm on a roll. Mm-hmm. All you're doing is you are perceiving more around you.
A lot of times I think you are. Yep.
Because you're relaxed. You're not. So I feel like this is for me, the more stressed I get, and this happened at Oneida and it happened at the last two tournaments I sucked in, the more stressed I get, the more focused I get. The more one-track mind I get, the more I need to make sure that my Ned rig is going down exactly to that rock. I need to make sure that I'm hitting every single piece of and I block everything else out. Now I go back to when I have had my good tournaments. I don't ever remember feeling that level of uber one-track mindedness. It just like manifests itself.
Yeah. I mean, even...
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Even on the days that you catch every fish on the same lure, you can look back and just say you were acutely aware of other things. Like you may have for a second picked up, I can think about when I was smashing them on a crankbait, I for a second picked up a drop shot and caught some on a drop shot. Then I'm like, oh, well, these aren't big enough. Let's go back to what we're doing. Like my conscience said, do this and you're going to catch more fish. And I did, but they weren't big enough. Like, so those days that you were catching them, even if it was one lure, you still say really aware, man. We talk about all the times like noticing a bird drop or like that video that you said you noticed that mayfly and you threw at that fish with the mayfly. All that little stuff. I've been losing my hearing as I get older and older and older, from construction and multiple ear infections and stuff. But there's still some weird ability that I can hear on the water. It's weird. And I don't know what it is, but it's like when you go and you're in nature and you're a nature guy, you have an ability to pick up on all those different senses. And I don't know where it all comes from because I can't hear as well anymore. So it's not all just hearing. There's a sense of that you have out there.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But I feel the more you're aware of it, the more you realize it could happen, the more you can kind of catch it, reset yourself.
Or find out you're not doing it.
Yeah.
And then that's the thing is as a person, to make yourself stronger, we talked about weak-minded people versus strong-minded people. How do you, if your day is going to be coming one of those crashes, are you one of those guys that just lets your day crash and then it goes into your week and then you take it into your home and then the next thing you know, a month later, you're still dealing with that same problem because of, a 30-minute decision that you could have actually controlled? Or have you learned how to reset your mind and refocus? There's literally times on the water, I don't know if you've ever had this feeling or anybody else has ever had this feeling, where sometimes I'm just like, dude, I think I just need to jump in. Like start the day over, like wet and soaked. Like, or like you have a big rainstorm come in, it's been a bad day, and the rainstorm comes in, and then the sun comes out, and it's like,
changes.
You just start over, and you're like, and all of a sudden, it's gone. Like you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to control it before it hits you. If it has hit you, be able to stop it and get back on the right path.
All right, let's take some fishing questions. If it has the word live scope forward facing sonar 360 in it, I think we'll skip it. You good with that?
Whatever. Throw it all at me.
Nothing like having a guy who owns an electronics store on and we're refusing to answer electronic. I'm just kidding. If you have one, we will take a couple of those if you want them to. The problem is that's a Scott question. Almost all of them are Scott questions. So if you have a detailed electronics question, John knows how to answer it, but Scott knows how to answer it better. Is that a fair assessment?
I'm the guy that knows how to utilize it to find and locate fish. And
all
Scott's the engineer behind
the
tech side.
We'll start with the fishing question. Go ahead and put your questions in the instant feedback then, and then I'll just randomly scroll through and pick one here in a couple minutes. But Clay would like to know, you said that the spinnerbait, buzzbait, and it's a jig type of year. What are your go-to spinnerbait, buzzbait, and jig?
Okay, so the spinnerbait this year has been the Covert 3/8, and help me remember the name of these blades. Not Indiana, not Colorado.
Oklahoma?
In between.
Indiana, Colorado, what?
Yeah. Indiana blades. Not Willow. So yeah, double Indiana blades.
Okay.
Yeah, double Indiana. A smaller one. I've been able to put that everywhere. Blue chartreuse and white. I've didn't used to be a big fan of it, but I'm becoming more of a fan of it everywhere I go. So that's my go-to spinnerbait for a year in a year out spinnerbait. So we got spinnerbait, buzzbait. It's the Booyah 1/2 ounce black with the big clacker. I did throw a 3/8 a little bit.
That thing is meaty.
Yeah, it is a meaty dude.
You just go into Walmart and pick them up. They're everywhere too.
I mean, I don't fish a buzzbait tournament without having 12 of them in the boat. I know that sounds weird, but I'm very anal about the sound and stuff. And you catch a couple big ones on there, and you have to kind of get the ball back on it the right way. So, but that's my favorite buzzbait. It's been for a dozen years now, since it came out. So that's my go-to buzzbait. And then what's
jig?
Jig. Man, that the War Eagle Jiu-Jitsu.
Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, it's not Jiu-Jitsu, but it's Jiu-Jig-Su.
Oh, Jiu-Jigs. Oh, I see what they did there.
Yeah,
that's
Jiu-Jig-Su.
clever. Very clever.
It's a 5/8 ounce jig, so it allows you to be a lot more aggressive. I like heavier stuff. I catch a lot more bigger fish on heavier, whether it's a 3/4 ounce, 1 ounce, or 5/8 ounce, whether I'm doing a jig or Texas rig fishing. I just, if I can get if I can get a bigger, heavier weight bite going, I feel confident that I'll catch bigger fish. So that jig's big. It's big and meaty.
Didn't you tell me a story one time in a Bass Nation how you had like a 12 to 19 pounder or some absolute just freak of nature vaporize
a
buzzbait on Eufaula?
Yeah. That was crazy. Yeah, I did have a co-angler, which of course I don't remember who that was at that time to speak, like back up the story.
Yeah.
But that same black buzzbait years ago on Eufaula in the fall, it's very common. I'm throwing a buzzbait, and I'm covering a flat. And I've been running by this log for the last 2 days, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. Just a floater that got stuck on a flat. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop and fish this thing. So I pull up and I make a long cast with this buzzbait, and I mean there was a circle this big around that just dumped, probably 10 inches. Just the whole thing just dumped, and I set the hook on that, and I couldn't move that fish to save my life. I couldn't move it at all. And it finally started swimming to me, and then it just came off. And the fish was never hooked. I had it on an extra heavy rod, 7'10" with 65-pound braid, and I mean, I jacked that fish, and it never penetrated that. So, I mean, it was as much of a bass swirl as anything I've ever seen, but it sure did. Maybe it was just a giant catfish.
Nah, I've had 3 of them, and I mentioned that I had it happen on Thunderbird this year.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and it was between 8 and 10, and it was in 2 foot of water, and I've had 3 buzzbait bites in my life where it drops off the face of the planet.
Yeah.
And it's a delayed sound. It's not a blow up. It's literally the fish moving so many gallons of water through their jaws by sucking the water down that the buzzbait, the best way I can describe it is ceases to exist. It's vaporized, falls off the edge of the earth.
Yeah.
And you can't explain it until you've seen it. First one happened, I was with Fred Rambanis, and it was a double digit, and he said it was one of the 5 biggest he'd ever seen, but it was the same thing. First thought that went through my head, grass carp, flathead, something like that, and then it jumps and it's a bass. Mm-hmm. It happened again to me at Thunderbird, and I was with Ledoux, jumped off on the 3rd jump. Braid, 7.4, medium heavy, a little bit. I mean, the same thing, but on a toad on the back. I mean, good hook in it. He said, did you jack it? Did you set the hook in him? And I said, dude, I don't remember. I said, I was just fishing a buzzbait, and then it was on. It was just one of those bites that is seared into your memory for as long as you fish.
Yep, I'll never forget this flush either. No way.
All right, like I said, get a couple questions in. We'll hit John with some rapid-fire questions here. Anything you want to know, fishing too. If it is an electronics question, that's fine too. Or live scope question, we'll take those. You've made your bet on that. You're going to have to answer those the rest of your life.
Brett Anderson's there. I can answer that one pretty quick.
Okay. Brett Anderson says, do you have some tips for using live scope for seeing bass in the grass? I'd love to be able to see fish flipping grass.
Yep. So this is one of the most difficult times that you're going to be able to use electronics to find and locate fish with using forward-facing sonar, live scope in particular here. The biggest thing that I can do is kind of a little bit of that wax on advice. Start out by ranging in really close. Don't range out any further than 45 feet. If the grass is in 15 feet, don't look down in 20, 25 feet. Just look down into maybe 13 or 15. Range and zoom your screen into what you're actually looking at until you're able to diagnose what the fish are actually doing, how they're behaving, what fish are there, and then you can kind of range out a little bit and start picking them up from a longer distance. If the wind's not blowing, you're going to be looking for movement inside the grass. You're not going to actually be able to see fish, but grass doesn't move unless there's current, whether it's current or wind current. So that is something that you can use on non-windy days to try to find and locate what's going on. Same thing with paying attention to the bait. Pay attention to the bluegill and things like that, because you may not actually be able to see the predator fish around there, but if the bait fish are around, then there's a good chance that the predator's around, the bass.
Nice. I got to go back to Clay's question about the go-to jig, spinnerbait, and buzzbait. Look at that photo there. I think if I remember right, just perusing the
That's a big one.
the feedback, like a lot of guys chat in the chat, have a separate conversation during the show. I believe he said that he caught his PB, and if you notice there, he has his kid strapped to his chest.
Oh, I see.
And he caught his PB while his baby was strapped to the front of his chest.
So I got a funny story. I'm sitting here, fishing dad, thing, which with Justin Lucas seeing his son catch. Dude, that was the coolest thing yesterday. But my little boy came with me on Boomer Lake one day, and I realized that he was 5 years old or 4 years old. It was a while ago, 10 years ago. He didn't have a life jacket. I forgot to bring a life jacket. Of course, I was rigged and ready.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm jacked to go fishing. So I put on one of those ones where you pull the cord.
Yeah.
I pull it around him. I pop it, and it swells up around him. I'm like, hey, we're good to go.
You just kept it on him.
So an hour later, I catch an 8-pounder, and I'm like, why isn't he excited? You know what? I didn't even notice. He hasn't fished the whole time. And I look back, and he's frozen. Like
he can't move because his
he
arms.
can't move. I'm like, oh, dude, I'm such a bad dad. I'm like, I'm sorry, buddy. We'll go home.
Is this the one that doesn't ever talk?
Yeah, John.
John.
Yeah.
Yeah. John has a he's very good at fishing.
He is a good
and
fisherman.
Athletics and all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But he's a man of few words.
He is a man of few words.
Like I've fished with him twice, and if you ask him a question, if you don't ask him an open-ended question, it is a yes or a no.
Yep.
And I honestly think he could catch a 5 or 6 pounder and never say a damn
Oh,
thing.
no. He'll be in the back of the boat with me. He'll boat flip a 4 or 5 pounder, and then I'll hear a splash. And I look back, I'm like, did you catch one? He's like, yeah. I'm like, was it a good one? He's like, yeah. Like, you're supposed to shout, high five, celebrate, do something.
All right. Chris would like to know how you shut your work brain off while you're competing in high-level tournaments.
I guess I have an ability to compartmentalize, probably because I have an ability to fail at other things. I am 100% dyslexic. I've had issues my entire life with things. When I was younger and had to study, I'm pointing out a flaw to tell you that, don't beat up your kids if you have these flaws, because you create other abilities in your life with your flaws. I had to go and lock myself in a closet, shut the lights off, put one light on, and study all night and repeat sentence after sentence after sentence to study because I couldn't do it. So there's a lot of simple things in life that a lot of people can, that they do every day, that I struggle with, and I get really frustrated. Like if you take me into a Bath and Body and say, John, pick out the strawberry on the shelf, dude, I'm probably sweating and mad by the time I get out there because I can't do it. I'm mad, because I know I should be able to just read strawberry, but my brain's going all over the place.
Yeah.
Right? So because I've had that problem, I'm actually better at multitasking with 100 tasks than I am with just 1 or 2. Like you give me 1 or 2 tasks and I kind of fall asleep on board. You give me 100 things that are impossible to solve, and I won't get them all done, but I'll get 80 of them done really good.
Yeah. And
so I think dealing with that kind of stress and stuff my entire life, because everything feels kind of stressful when you're that way. I don't know if ADHD people kind of deal with the same thing. I'm sure there's a lot of different things that people deal with.
Yes.
So
I deal with it. It's the head coach of the NSU bowling team is over there. Mark, do I deal with ADHD issues from time to time over the 15 years that you've known me and employed me?
Just a few.
He said just a few.
So compartmentalizing, like having that ability to shut things off, because I know that stress is going to be there afterwards. I'm also 40 years old. I'm not 20 anymore. I keep on saying that a lot. I've been saying that a lot. I guess I'm proud. I got my 40-year-old badge. I need it, dude. I've earned it. I've been through a lot of experiences in life. I've had my own business since I was 19, 20 years old. And so we've been through a lot, man. And so that helps you learn how to not to focus on the task that's on hand.
Yeah,
and that task is catching fish.
All right, this is a really good question from Kyle. As a first-time boat owner and aspiring tourney angler, would you recommend I make the investment in forward-facing sonar and hone my skills in that with conjunction with basic skills? That's a great question. I don't think I've heard that question before. Do you learn without electronics and live scope the basics of bass fishing, or in the Wild West that we're in now, do you learn with forward-facing technology?
I think you do both, and I think you intentionally do it. Like you go out and say, hey, this is going to be a sonar day, and I think there's days that you take that thing off your boat and you go as shallow as you can, and you learn how to catch a fish just 100% off your instincts. And I think that being able to hone both of those, if you're an aspiring tournament angler to hit a high level, you have to have that. Yes, Jason Christie is the best live scoper in the world, but he's also the best jig fisherman in the world. Like he's got both of those abilities, so he knows when to turn one on and turn one off. If that's the thing about like Kevin Rogers coming in from the crappie side. Mm-hmm. He's learning now how to focus on his live scoping skills, which is his biggest strength. But he's also learning a little bit more of these conjunction with basic skills. That's how he's having better finishes.
And he's definitely going to be on BTL. Like I said, there's no like rule for how we do it in this podcast world. I try not to jump on top of other people. Like I said, you just did a great interview with Bass Edge. I'd already booked you.
Yeah.
And then the Bass Edge literally came out like a minute after. So go listen to Kurt. It's more of a kind of a shorter, precise, less rambling. That's just their style of show for more concise stuff. But I know I was working on not working. I was like, hey, I need to get Kevin on. I talked about that month, but then he jumped on Luke's show. So I didn't want to like follow it up because, you know, Luke does a great job with the in-depth interviews and gets them on there for a while too. So once something else happens and towards the end of the year, I'll get Kevin on. It's also selfish because that's when the crappie season starts to fire up, and I'm going to try to invite myself again in the boat with them for crappie deal this fall. So I didn't want to do it like in the middle of summer.
I'll also answer Kyle like this time is money, right? And if you have a minimal investment of knowing whether if you invested in a live scope, it was going to take you away from being on the water more to fish, then absolutely don't. Like, focus on fishing. Make sure your investment is time on the water, not in the equipment that you own. That's coming from a guy that makes money selling electronics.
Can't say any better. John Harris would like to know, you've often said that crappie fishing makes you a better bass fisherman. Has tournament bass fishing made you a better, more intuitive crappie fisherman?
Yeah, I think it went hand in hand. But, I came from the bass world into the crappie tournament world. So I had, it's been a couple years since I've been back on the crappie trail. So I'm kind of on the other side coming out of it. But what goes hand in hand about that is the predator and the prey. Understanding with a predator, when it's behaving a certain way, that the prey is behaving another way. In conjunction with that, when the prey is acting a certain way, i.e. when you see crappie behaving a certain way, I knew those crappie don't behave that way if there's predators around. So get the heck out of there, the bass aren't around. Or if I go in there and the bass are acting a certain way, I know to get the heck out of there because the crappie aren't going to be around. Or if they are around, they're hiding really tight to cover, and they're going to be hard to find and catch. So
good stuff. Eddie P., what are your deepest, darkest feelings about fish becoming accustomed to the pinging of a live scope? Does live scope even ping? It has to, doesn't it?
It sounds like a radiation. Yeah, it ticks, but it's
right.
not the same. It's not the same.
Eddie, thank you for asking this question.
Yeah. So listen, I've had as many hours on it as anybody that's out there. I know there's guys that feel like they've seen where they've scanned on a fish and it's hit it and the fish have reacted. There's only been one time in my life that I felt like the fish were really reacting to my sonar. It was during a crappie tournament, and I realized that when I got within 15 to 20 feet of them, that these fish were spooking off. And everybody in the tournament was talking about this, by the way. It was like it was known that we weren't going to be able to drop on them. We were going to have to cast at them because you couldn't get close enough to drop on them. But what I realized is they were actually freaking out more when I would hit the button on my trolling motor than anything. So to be honest with you, I don't see that being. I've just caught too many fish. I have never seen fish. I think that just fish are running a lot more than what we think. So when we hit them with the sonar, they run, and we're like, "Oh, that fish got scared by the sonar." I don't personally believe. I know people that I'm close to that feel like they've seen that. Very, very small percentage. I don't think these fish are scared of it.
All right, Nate. Thank you for being patient with this question. You asked it earlier. In what situation do you use perspective mode, and what range you use it on?
So I'm using perspective mode a lot more now. I didn't use it a lot in the past. I did try it early on, but I was doing a lot of crappie fishing. I'm using it now that I've gone up north a lot, and I'm having to fish rock piles and things of that nature that are offshore that I can get out of position on, that I'm not really focused on just one target, but just kind of general areas. So I actually have two. Unfortunately, right now I've got two live scopes on my trolling motor. I got one that's in perspective mode constantly, and that thing's ranged out around 80 to 120 feet. I don't really mess around with it being up close. And I've got a mount, and I forgot the name of it, and I should know this because it's a special deal. But I can adjust my perspective mode to what angle that it's at. And that helps out a lot, because there's definitely times, depending on how close you have to get, that you may, or how deep the water is, you may need to, range that down or turn it up a little bit. So that is a work in progress for me to perfect that. But I've definitely noticed that Oneida, it was nice to have that perspective mode when I was targeting rock piles.
Very nice. Jim would like to know, when you see no fish on obvious structures and spots, do you do something special to see if they're tight to the bottom?
I used to, before all electronics, just fire up the motor and rev it. And you might be able to see them come up on 2D and the down imaging and stuff like that. Obviously, that's not if I'm going to tournament fish right there, but, when I'm practicing things like that. For the most part, when we're talking about largemouth, if you don't see them, they're non-existent. That's not always the case, though, so I need to take a step back. Now, I will tell you that going up north, I've learned more and more, which is my failure at the one that the Canadian Coupe Gallant 1.
Same thing with me. I idled over where they were supposed to be on a Demiki rig at Cherokee, and they weren't there, and I dropped for 5 minutes and went, well, guess they're up shallow.
Yep.
And Coop said they were on the bottom, and he said he'd catch one, and it'd look like friggin' spaghetti down there.
So the smallmouth over largemouth have an ability to blend in the bottom and get away from electronics. I don't know why. I think it's a behavioral thing. I wish I had a camera view of actually what they were doing when I couldn't see them. But I will tell you, on Oneida, I limited out on day 2 because of that knowledge. I couldn't see them anywhere, and so I actually went away from all the grass, threw a jerkbait out in the middle of nowhere, ripped it as fast as I could, and I started seeing fish coming up on the bottom to chase this jerkbait. Now, they wouldn't eat it, but then I kind of made them school, and then I turned around and threw a drop shot in on those fish. So, like, there is definitely times when just because you don't see them doesn't mean that they're not there.
All right, we'll take 2 more questions. I had one. Oh, Chris asked another one. I'm curious on this. You're an electronics guru. What is the next big thing coming down the pipe?
I think it's a lot more of what we're seeing, guys. I think it's going to be more, bigger, and better. Even Garmin's even released new live scope deucers that shoot up to 500 feet. They're for salt water, but, guys haven't been using them for freshwater yet. But they're out there. It's the XR. You can get them at thebasstank.com. I think we're going to see a lot crazier mapping abilities. Functionality of mapping is going to go through the roof with not just the mapping, but also the layover of Google Earth imagery, of real live. I think like how your phone picks up GPS waypoints and it knows that there's a wreck up ahead. I think there could be a lot of that transferring into people's graphing abilities and stuff like that. So I think there's going to be a lot more communication sharing and things like that are going to happen.
All right. Then last question, Corey Weaver. What is the best all-around value unit for the average guy? Give a...
I think if you're going to go with Lowrance, you're going to go with the FS 9-inch. If you're going to go with Garmin, there's a UHD 93. You get the BassTank.com, either one of those. Those are the best values. You're like at $699, around that. And I can't quote on the FS right now. My brain's... Is
it the Elite FS?
Yeah.
Okay, so right now, I think, they're still running
it. There's a sale right now. And that in conjunction with the sale that's like on Active Target. The reason why I say this the best all around is because they have still the best mapping available. You can still buy your chips for them. They do the downside imaging, but they also work with your forward-facing sonar. So,
okay.
So to me, that is the best bang for your buck.
9 inches is the smallest. 9 inches is the smallest screen you want to go with if you're planning on utilizing forward-facing sonar from any brand.
Correct.
I use a 9-inch screen still.
Right.
I'm like the only guy I think like me rolling up with a 9-inch screen now in the opens is like guys rolling up with like no spot, like a Fortrex.
Right.
Like everyone just like looks at it. What it is.
Yeah, but we all caught a lot of fish in those.
But I'm comfortable with it. I'm used to it. I've talked with you. I've talked with Scott, and what I've come to the conclusion is, if you're good with it, you're good with it. And yeah, it might not be as easy, or you might not see as much, but it's very good. Like I don't feel like I'm missing fish because of it at all. And I run a 9-inch screen with the original. Deucer. The
reason why I have the big screens on my boat is because I'm putting on a water I've never been to in my life, and most of the time I got 2.5 days to find out as much information as I can about this water.
Yeah.
And that's why I've got it there, and I don't want to miss anything. If I was staying at home and around the house a lot more, my screens wouldn't be as large.
Yeah, I mean, my forward-facing unit I got in 2019, I walked in with actual cash, actual dollar bills, and put it down on the table and called John and said, I'd like forward-facing technology on my boat. I have a big tournament coming up. I believe you now. It is the deal. It is a tool that is going to be valuable for here on out. It is not coming and going. And that's the unit I still use. The exact same unit. Now, I've cut a couple transducer cables because I'm an idiot. But other than that, that's the same unit. Now, I will be upgrading with that shorty stack and getting a 12-inch unit and then the 12-inch HDS Live and stuff and stack it for this year. I'm finally now, and then of course everyone will have the 16s. But what? You're using a 12?
Yeah.
All right. I have all the names for the questions that we asked. This is for the screen cleaner, the Bass Tank screen cleaner. What are they going to get? Are they going to get the rag?
the rag comes with either one, whether the 16-ounce bottle or a 2-ounce bottle.
Okay.
But we're going to give away the 2-ounce bottle and the rag.
The 2-ounce bottle lasts for a long time, too.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, you can use this on anything. Obviously, we designed it for our electronic screens, but you wipe your phone down for a week, your phone will be clean. Like, I put it on I clean my front of my car with it, your glasses, like anything that has a lens or glass, it's even a little bit of the metal, like anything
All right.
that you want to clean. It's
so
awesome.
This is your job. So the email is questions at...
My favorite one? Do I get to pick my favorite question? Or how are you doing it? You doing it?
Do you have a favorite question?
I do have a favorite question.
Yeah, we'll go with your favorite question then. But wait, so if you are John's favorite question, email questions at thebasstank.com. Also, if you have a question that did not get answered, more so, this is a electronics. If you're interested, you want to know what's best for your boat, you have an issue that's going on with it, questions at thebasstank.com. Now, there's no timeline for this. Like I said, this is like a free service for BTL listeners, because Scott was like, dude, your listeners have like really great questions. I wish I could get to all of them. He said, but we can't inundate all of our email boxes and phone lines with questions, because it's you're running a business there. So he's like, hey, this is dedicated. So questions at thebasstank.com. But also, if you're John's favorite question, and we'll have the name here, and send your information, and then the Bass Tank will send you the brand new Bass Tank screen cleaner and Bass Tank microfiber cloth. So what was your favorite question, John?
Mine was the meat and potatoes question. What was your favorite spinnerbait, buzzbait, and jig? Because it's been so close to me this year, and I don't remember if his name was Dennis, but I can't.
I think that might have been Clay.
Clay.
Let me go back and find it.
Clay? It's been a minute ago, huh?
Hold on. We talked for 2 hours, and now we've got dead space. 10:16. What time is it? 10:30. All right. So that was like a long
it's just
time
like
ago.
It's just like a drive on the way to night. We just got 18 more hours to go.
Yeah. Dragonfly, Mayflies, awesome show. I'm 95% sure it was Clay.
There's a Clay Williams right there, but I don't know if that's. There it is.
Yeah,
Clay
right there.
Williamson.
Clay Williamson.
Yeah.
Shoot, that you
that
have won.
That was just the one I liked the most.
Yep. Oh, and I still have Corey Weaver's question up there. That's a good question too.
Oh yeah, they're good.
So we're going to be giving away one of these, more of these. I'm not going to put a time frame on it, because like I said, when I do it, I would put a time frame on it. Then but I've got a box of these that John brought in, also a couple, and I've showed this on the show before. I'm going to save these for the fall. These are the Bass Tank A-Rig holster.
Yeah.
Keep your A-Rigs from getting tangled up. I use them, so I'm going to put that for the giveaways in the future. Folks, I also want to say one of the things I have been working with the BTL sponsors is more giveaways from the new stuff. I know Big Bite Baits just came out with the Sensations line of plastics, a worm, a really cool soft worm that Cliff Perch designed. Drew Cook has some designs in there, and it's all a proprietary blend. Anyway, I blame Maxen on all this. Every company now, but it's really cool stuff with the designs, a lot soft. So they are going to Big Bite is going to send a big box of stuff, or before they send it, I'm going to do the same thing with that and be like, hey, can I just do like names and addresses, and then you guys can send it? Because they do that professionally. So a lot coming from Big Bite, also some stuff coming from AFCO giveaway in the future. I do need to log back into the MLF Pro Circuit Fantasy Fishing League, because you get a 7-foot 4-inch Denali Pro Lithium Pro spinning rod. My favorite spinning rod for whoever in the BTL group won the fantasy fishing on that. Now that season is done, so lots more stuff coming from the sponsors. Greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated for you coming in studio, John. Anything else you want to
Thanks
declare?
For putting up with me. Sorry if I rambled too long. Just love talking about fishing. So.
Well, I think that's the beauty of it is there is a valuable ramble.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of stuff in there that I learned, that I enjoyed, and great questions from the listeners. So tomorrow we'll be back, and we don't ramble on day 4 with Frank Scalish. We pontificate. I think that was the word that we came up with about a month or two ago. So This has been BTL on a Wednesday. We'll see you guys tomorrow.